for everybody watching me anywhere. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. It's Shirley with Spirit of Matter, and I'm with a special episode in favor of Mercury ingressing into Aries. So, those of you who caught the delight of the 29th degree Mercury in Pisces, let's take a moment of silence to commemorate that. And now, this is the chart. Oh my gosh, I'm doing it in Saturn hour. This is the chart of when I'm beginning to record, which I always like to do. I like to capture the point that I'm looking from before I discuss what I'm looking at. And so this is a Sunday and Saturn hour. If I had only waited 13 minutes, it would have been a Jupiter hour, but let's see how it rolls along. The ascendant is right on Mars. So it's Mars ruled ascendant with Mars on the ascendant. Let's see how it rolls. Mars is in the 27th degree of Gemini, and the ascendant is in the 25th degree with, I'm sorry, this is the Mercury ruled ascendant. The fuck? Because Mercury has ingressed into a Mars ruled sign. Um, and Midheaven is in Pisces. The Sun itself is in 28 degrees Pisces, squaring Mars. And Mercury is ruled by Mars right now. The hour is of Saturn, so let's take a look at that. Saturn is in Pisces. I predict times and the communication and timely communication perhaps will be something that will be more emphasized in my video versus videos of people who recorded in different times. And so if you are an astrologer and recording a forecast and somehow watching this, then perhaps you can share the time of your recording and we can compare our worldviews according to our vantage point in time. Of course, every person look at from their own chart too. What else to say about the chart of the moment? Venus is already in Taurus. Thank you to all my viewers for the Venus ingress into Taurus video. Very heartwarming to watch people watching. And yeah, let's just begin to look. I will keep this, I will not keep this, and we will go directly to see what will Mercury be doing in I'll choose the annual for that because I want to see transits, and then I'm gonna put Mercury. Just put any aspect, yeah, any aspect, and we are in March 19, so the ingress is, okay, so March 19, I believe this is the ingress chart. No, it's still, oh, yes, it's the ingress chart. So Mars is sextiling Pluto, separating from a sextile to Pluto with this ingress, and is separating from a square to Mars. So this is the first ingress into Aries, and I like, I like to look at ingresses, and I like especially to look at what the rulers of the houses that the planet ingresses to are doing, and are there any outer planets involved? Because this can be significant. And if you have seen my Venus in Taurus video, then you probably understand deeper what I did there. Now let's go to Mercury. So Mercury, language, communication, technology, trade agreements, and therefore traders, business people, the part of juristics that is about agreements. So the type of lawyers that deal with agreement, advocating, argumentative, so media, journalism, which is very related to juristics. So the type of trickery, so people who use the game of war as trickery. So because we are ingressing into Aries, that is Mars rule sign, and here I'm also already beginning to talk about Aries. I believe Aries and Mercury combine in a lovely way, but there can be excess inflammation because Aries is the first. The 0 degrees Aries is the beginning of supposedly the journey on the ecliptic, or the psychological, the astrological journey. And the word psychological came because of the presence of Pluto there. Um, it's the mindset, it's the thinking. So Aries rules the head, and so it rules our mindset. It's the groundbreaking innovation, the road not taken. This is how I'd like to address Aries. It is cardinal in nature. So think about igniting, and I every time I talk about Aries, I almost mention this. You're igniting the engine. So this is just the ignition of the engine to get the engines rolling. Now from there, consequently, the next sign would be Taurus, which is a fixed sign. So you want to ignite something and then allow it to move forward to fix. But when we're just doing the Aries, we're just igniting. And and Aries is a fire sign, so the engine roll is a good description, because there's a certain sort of initial explosion, okay, a crossing of a threshold. I'm not saying that would express itself as explosions around, but it's a crossing of a threshold. And to get something to cross the threshold, it has to gather a certain momentum so that the threshold is crossed and the engine roll. Okay, if you ignite a fire, even if you take 2 stones, Saturn. Here's Saturn. You take 2 stones, okay, you rub it up, you rub against each other, you rub them up, and then the moment it hit, you hit them and the flame comes out. It takes a couple of times to try that, because Mercury is trying something over again until it ignites. So you keep a couple of times to ignite the engine. This can also be Mercury in Aries, by the way, the trial there, and then the fire's out. So that moment in linguistics, which is another facet of Mercury, there is the notion of achievement in lexical linguistics, and achievement or arrival. For example, when you say I arrived at the airport, you mean a moment of arrival. It's a moment captured in time. It's not a process. So achievement is not a process. Of course, that does depend on your linguistic lexical theories, and if you use lexical theories at all in your linguistics, which does not necessitate any of that. But when I talk even from a language point of view, when I say arrived, then I say something happened. There was an achievement. Something happened, and that was a moment in time. It was not a process. Okay? So Mercury in Aries is those type of words. I arrived, I ignited, the type of things that don't take time to accomplish, but they can take time in the sense, and this is where Saturn comes in. I'm happy I brought Saturn, because there's always something good to give from a point of view. Mercury is about trial and error. It's about invention. Aries is also invention. So, because it's the first, it's the newest, the road not taken. It's what I like to talk about Aries. With Aries, you can get 2 options, you make a third one. Okay. Whereas with Gemini, you have 2 options, and sometimes you have to find a way to jungle them both. And sometimes there's a phase where you choose between 2 options. It's like both of you are lovely, but I can only dedicate my time and resources to one of you. So that depends on which type of Mercury you're dealing with, or which type of Gemini you're dealing with. That's more relevant to Gemini. And if you think about ignition or making a third option, somebody gives you 2 choices. There's a fork in the road. There's a T. Okay, you're coming to a T junction and you go straight ahead. That's Aries. And you can hear these thrusts, this kind of all that, even the sound. When you ignite a fire, you get up, and then you finally get both the bravery to be as aggressive as it takes to get that explosive power. Think about the muscles of explosive power. There's also Aries, and you don't have a lot of repetitions with that. Okay, so Um, and Mercury ingressing into Aries gives us that type of, I tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it twice, and boom, I went and I exploded out and I crossed the threshold and I ignited that engine. Now, what's going to happen with that, if it's not being taken somewhere, let's say Taurus, if it's not being taken to the next level where it is maintained, or where there's a process that we ignited and now we maintain it, it's going to die off. Okay, when you light a match, it doesn't light, like it doesn't light forever. It burns and then it dies off. And if you want to light the next candle, you have to light another match. And so Mercury Aries can give us the sense of ignition of something that we've never done before. The best thing with Aries is that you have a sequences of doing things you've never done before, because you're going to be doing that a lot wherever Aries is in your life. Okay, if you're ascendant Aries, you probably are likely to have a lot of new beginnings in your life, or start projects and then allocate them, delegate them to people who will pursue that and continue that. When it's Mercury, so it can be about trade, it can be about new coinage that can arise at this time, and there will probably not be viral, because I don't see anything taking space, although it's separating from Neptune, then perhaps, but there can be new coinage, there can be new type of trade, new type of agreement you've done before, which is like, I have to renew my agreement, my contract on the housing. And I know that there are certain things that I need to reassess, like it's not going to be the same contract. Mercury in Aries does not yield the same contract each year. Something changes, okay, about this. Another type of communication, or a new way to look at language, and Aries is ruled by Mars. It's an action. It's the sense of self, the sun exalts in Aries. It's the sense of self, but the sense of self is very much related to doing. If you think about Rene Descartes, I think, therefore I am, that's a typical Aries. Okay, the act of thinking makes me who I am. I define myself by being a thinking being. Okay, and thinking is an action. So Mercury does things here. Okay, in Pisces, it just was and words emerge, which we could all celebrate like during the honorific degree. But in Aries, as it ingresses into Aries, words become action. And it's not the Mars Gemini words become action, because the Mars Gemini is a framework and the Mercury Aries is a new word. Somebody comes up with new words, new concepts, new hashtags. There can also be the emergence of a new social media to a lesser extent. You have to understand that these things happen all the time. It's innovations happen all the time. It's just that there are those that we hear about that become viral, but startups are happening all the time. Mercury enters the first phase of Aries, which I call the Mars. So it's extra ambitious. Think about the ambition you need to develop a new country, okay, to conquer a new land. But here you conquer with words, and your words have actions. Your words create something new in the world. If in Pisces you conceive, you channel, you encounter the sort of like wide currents, then in Mercury you express a word into being, that it has an alchemical actions where you say something, you speak something into being. It's not the Venusian type of speaking into being, but more a breakthrough in agreement. This can be a time of a peace agreement, or new type of agreements, okay? Something is starting. Now that was just Mercury Aries. What's more, well, why was I say new laws can be new initiation to bring certain new laws because of the trickery aspect of juristics. One thing I really like to remind both myself and my audience is I read Christopher Warnock, kind of petition to Mercury or the ode to Mercury that you read when you light a candle for the day. And one of the words that really surprised and enchanted me about Mercury is when you call the many names and many qualities of Mercury and then you say trustworthy. And that was very beautiful for me to encounter. So I take that trustworthy. Mercury does not look at trust in Aries in a traditional way. To be, especially after going through the passage of Pisces, there's an understanding of what can we account for in our words and what we cannot. Okay, or the currents of the times are changing, and then there's an understanding. For example, the word commitment. Okay, what is commitment? What can I commit to and for how long? Saturn, time. Okay, I'm speaking from the hour of Saturn. For how long, although I believe it's already Jupiter hour now, but for how long can I commit to something? If I sign a contract, so contracts are mercurial, but the contracts have a time spectrum. So for how long can I commit? Let's say we're getting married. For how long can we commit until we renew the vows? And what does it mean legally on our possessions, on our joint resources, on the way we think of ourselves? Okay. Mercury is in itself adaptable, and so its sense of trustworthiness is in authenticity, especially in Aries. Okay, it's authenticity. It's the knowing that I adapt. Okay, if I am with malefics, then that may, like, there might be a time where around my surroundings I have those type of energies affecting me. I know that I'm affected by that. Okay? And so what I can try to do is how to work with this energy in a way that is best suiting me being trustworthy. Or if I'm around benefics, I know I'm going to want to enjoy that. Okay? So trust is about being true to the self in Aries. Being true to oneself is more important than having prolonged agreements with other people. Here, Mercury is separating from a square with Mars. And Mars is the ruler of Mercury here. So by the relationship of a square is friction. It's 90 degrees. And words can come out in a way that creates tension, or certain tension can be within the words, and that can be the tension of the meaning of the word, what this word how this word functions. So there can be, I think about one case where, you know, I like to take music, for example, and there was a lot of controversies around Beyonce's Renaissance, and one of the songs used the word caca. And caca means feces in many languages, including Hebrew. And so there was a controversy about that. But there's also the notion that she did not mean to say feces. She was just taken from other culture. And so just saying the word caca yields certain tension. Okay, the way I would hear it as a Hebrew-speaking person versus the way a person for whom the word caca means something completely different is different. We cannot change this initial ignition experiences. Okay, something is ignited, the nervous system flashes somewhere in our brain when we hear that. So I would laugh. Yeah, maybe some other person with another language where caca means feces would be offended, and that is something we can't control. And so the initial phase of Mercury in the Mars is people say something and it triggers something and you can't control what it triggers. It happens very quickly and it creates friction. that can also soon be resolved. With Aries, the same way something is ignited, it can dissipate, and that's a quality that has a pro and con. If you want the fire to keep, you have to reignite the fire all the time if you want a stable fire, but you also can allow things to dissolve, and Aries can completely move on from somewhere that was. Well, what comes to my mind is actually when I listened to the 4 hour long episode with Chris Brennan and Austin Coppock yesterday, and Austin talked about Pisces as the quality of immersing and then letting go. With Aries, it's beginning a combat, full blown ignition, and then completely letting go. Like I could be fiercely angry at you. It's in a life or death situation, Mars. And then once we're done, once I'm no longer like, I can see that that was the situation. We were at war. Now we're not at war. We're not in conflict. We resolve this conflict. If this is resolved, alchemized, transmuted, the threshold of conflict has been crossed. I ain't got nothing against you. I'm not gonna hold anything against you. I don't carry grudge. Nothing. It was like, okay, I needed to solve this problem. This problem is solved. Okay, goodbye. Great, wonderful. And that's the Aries way. Of course, you have to understand what is afflicting or not afflicting. This is Aries. Yeah, if you have some, I don't know, if Mars is in Scorpio, then that can be more difficult. Or if you have like Pluto, like here coming into, then the process of letting go can be more difficult. But also, the process of the fire dissolving can be more gradual. So, if depending on what you're igniting, if you're igniting a car, or you're igniting a war, or you're igniting a conversation, or you're igniting a relationship. Okay. Mercury, this is the Mercury square Mars. So this means that both Mars actions and the way we think about those actions or our motives for those actions are very quick and very impulsive, and that can have both positive and negative effects. Okay? A spiritual point of view is called into place whenever these things happen, because as with Mercury retrogrades, there's a lot of what I like to do, and I do have natal Mercury in Aries in the Venus phase, and what I like to do is to look into the early learning and the mistakes that people make. When I studied linguistics, that's basically a part of what I did. I really like to look at how the mistakes that people make in language and the mechanism, because if a person is making a mistake in English, I can understand what language are they thinking in now through the grammar or the or the lexical terms used, and then get the glimpse of the window to the soul of that person through language. And the kind of mistakes that happen here can really reveal underlying thought patterns or action patterns where both the motives can be exposed by chance, and it's sometimes not a terrible thing. This can be a situation where two people find out that they have a crush on each other. It can also be a situation where you find out that, let's say one of these archetypes is in your 12th house. Oh, you had a hidden enemy you didn't know about. People can find out that somebody was planning to attack, and so you stop this attack. One of the things that happened in Israel when squaring the Mercury, Sun, Neptune conjunction was that we had an invader from Lebanon who reached all the way to central Israel to drop a bomb there, just like the bags you have bombs in and to explode that. And the bomb was not was caught when he was in central Israel, but what it had exposed is the issue that we had in defense, that somebody managed to get all the way from supposedly Lebanon, unless we're being told lies, into central Israel without anybody noticing. Okay, so there was both an element of exposure, and with the Neptune, there was an element of it not working out. Like there was not actual bonding happening. Like they stopped him eventually. And so with this Mercury separating from Neptune, there could be a bit of that, but there can also be, even without the Neptune thingy, um, uh, that in a way something good happens of the result of the Mercury being in the Mars and Mars squaring it. Like, because Mercury tries to ignite something, but it is not informed because it just entered Aries. It doesn't know what the heck is going on, and then something is there's a friction, and so learning through friction. There was a friction, and through this friction, you learn what is the true essence of a situation. Okay. It can be a discovery by chance. It can be a fight that begins, or a fight or an argument that yields to a certain discovery or to a certain invention, because this tension and friction creates some technological invention. You might be trying to do something, trying to sign an agreement, then there is an interference from this Mars who's ruling what you as Mercury is trying to do, and you're like, okay, there's more to the table than I have been shown, and it's very okay because I just entered the building. So this is how I see the point of the ingress and the event that marks this ingress. And then we have the sextile to Pluto. And again, I always like to look at outer planets. Although it's a separating sextile, it's a very exact. It's separating from a conjunction with Neptune and thereby a sextile with Pluto. Pluto is again on the anaretic degree, on the 29th degree, is spending enough time in the 29th degree of Capricorn to allow us to at least attempt to see and reveal all the hidden factors that we will need to deal with in the next 248 years until Mercury returns to the point where it's at. Now, most of us at least believe that we will not be alive, although some of us can be. And that's another thing that we need to prepare for. Even when you think about generational wealth, Pluto in Capricorn, think about how, when you save for your retirement, okay? We're already seeing longevity and people outliving their wealth when we are not living longer than 100 years. Think about 300 years. What happened when we live 300 years? How would you calculate your life if you knew you were going to spend the next 300 years on this planet? What decisions would you make? What structures would you tend to? What can we say? The only, like, if I think about it, and Pluto is in the sign that is ruled by Saturn, so Saturn is agriculture, again, Saturn coming to the discussion. What can you do but plant trees, right? You don't know what will happen with these trees, but you definitely know that can affect the climate, that can affect the water, that can make a contribution. So this is one safe thing you can do for the next 300 years is plant seeds, plant good seeds, sow good seeds in the land. And so the visions, like what would we even look like? What would we even feel like? A lot of the things that are happening with AI and the deep fake, it has begun with the Mars in Gemini and was further emphasized with the AI and the deep fakes and identities as that the concept of truth becomes more Piscean. Because let's say somebody did something to you, something good or something bad, okay? Somebody got up in your astrals and gave you a good orgasm that you really enjoyed. Or somebody got up in your energy and you cut yourself. Okay? Hopefully not, severely. Then you don't know who this being is, or is it even human? You don't know the reality of what happened. You don't know does that correlate with the deep fake that was presented to you? And you don't know you don't know anything. all you're left with is an experience in essence. And so we can touch the essence of something that's way more fluid than we can predict it to be. And there's also something cathartic about this notion that a lot of our lived experience before AI, all the world wars we were having, all the fraud, all the conflict, and all the love we were making, like the good and the bad and everything, there was a lot of journeying, of experiencing, of a lived story, a lived dream that was very real, sometimes even more so than we can imagine. And when the AI comes, it just accentuates on something that has always been there, but we take a look at it from a different point of view. Okay? If nothing is real, what's the point of hating you? If nothing is real, what's the point of deeply attaching to you other than enjoying the experience of bonding? Okay? And so Mercury's words of action perhaps are more informed, and there can be both the notion of taking ourselves less seriously and taking ourselves more seriously. Okay? One of the things that I was thinking about with Mercury was in the honoretic degree, and the Mercury Neptune brought a lot of exposure, clearing of the heart, because it was next to the sun too. So clearing of the heart with words, speaking out. Changing the energy in the body by speaking out, releasing the words that were needed to be said. And one of the things that came up in my mind was, of all these truths that shall be said, words of love should not be excluded. And if that was revealing a certain truth or a certain paths that were emanating when Mercury was in Pisces, in Aries can be, of all the realities that we create with words, the reality of joy and love and ease and longevity of that should not be excluded. Now, how to go about it is a big deal, because think about the Tower of Babel, where people were separated by languages, by diversity of languages, and then the process of this, when this channel was called Channeling Science, one of the first channeling that I did with a kunzite on my forehead was that the scientific endeavor is the Tower of Babel, where accommodating and appreciating all the different languages and thereby experiences that people are coming from, different cultures, different beliefs, different methodologies, ontologies, epistemology, is actually the scientific endeavor. Like learning to appreciate that. And all of these are variations on the canon of truth. Now, this variation on the canon of truth is very much leading into exploring the canon of truth, or the sense of oneness that Aries explores, that is unity in thought. Think about the premise of universal grammar, and I did not do Chomsky's chart yet. Think about the Kantian notion of attempt to achieve a universal morality, and attempt to do that through the logos rather than through lived experience, Pisces. And so there is an attempt to translate the unity, the waters of creation that were in Pisces. Think about the water of creation, and emanating from the water of creation, the water breaks, a baby comes in, and that baby has a pre-lived experience, a pre-linguistic experience, and then they begin to speak. So through the spoken word, attempting to create a unity, and then the necessity to accommodate for societal fractures, Mars in Gemini. All of that under the umbrella of Pluto, kind of stomping its feet and releasing the final energy blockage of the 29th degree of Capricorn and societal structures. Like, how do we prepare to decentralize that which we rely on for generations, millennia, who knows how many eras, and zeitgeist and whatnot, and deconstruct that and dissolve that in favor of something new to emerge, while not completely, you know, like it's that mayhem, chaos that is now existing with the buds of new thought. There are new concepts of time. Einstein's discovery was first proven right and now being disproven by experiment. There are concepts, there are actual implementations of teleporting something, and all kinds of things that I really like. I didn't even get deep into the science news, but those are fascinating nowadays. Okay, the fundamental structure of an atom is being challenged again, and all these things are, you know, the fundamentals of creation being brought again to the surface and to be reformed, and all that we knew is no longer. But that is not a negative thing in any way, shape, or form, because there's a new structure emerging that has its own world. So this is just the outer planet context, both the conjunction with Pisces, okay, the breaking of the water of creation. Think about the story of creation, okay? There were, I believe it was like a ball of water, and it's described like a pregnancy. There's the water breaks, and then there's creation, then there is separation. So the individuation of cells, when you think about an embryo, a fetus, so there's a cell, you're a cell, and then you begin to multiply and to individuate and to become a shape of form. Or think about the sexual organs, okay, or a clitoris, and then either you develop into a penis or you end up as a clitoris. And that does not mean you're undeveloped, it's just that something else develops there in a way that is less formal, but you develop a void that allows you to contain life rather than a seed that allows you to inseminate life, and all of these things. Also in the context of a lot of people living longer, and I think Lada, for the next point, Lada Doncheva, which discussed Pluto in Aquarius, and one of the things she mentioned was less children but people living longer. And that is again fascinating, and how Western centric are we when we say that, and how global, because a lot of the things that we look up at as changes that happen globally are just changes that happen in the West, and yet it's not just the West. So impressive entry of Mercury into Aries. Very bound by two outer planets, so nothing that Mercury does here is casual in its or purely mundane. There's just something that happens with everything that will ingress into Aries, into Taurus, into Gemini now, because of the spirit of the times. Where are the outer planets? Okay, Pluto will sextile everything at the end of Pisces and beginning of Aries, will square anything at the beginning of Taurus, will trine anything in the beginning of Gemini, for example, Sedna. And we can absolutely not talk about the context of the Pluto trine to Sedna whenever we mention something going through or igniting that, even this Pluto. And Sedna is about the meridians, is about the chakras. If I spoke in the 29th degree of, not just the 29th, the whole conjunction, triple conjunction, and that conjunction basically sextiling Sedna, then the notion of an act of speech to liberate the meridian blockages energetically, and the messages that were coming out releasing these meridians. Something I definitely did during the sugar-free lemonade era, and something I absolutely did during the triple conjunction. And so that notion that you need to start thinking in terms of meridians and energy being released from them and the political effect it has, and how we are part of these meridians. Going back to the Me Too era, and how I like to joke about the fact that it was like, what do I want? An autonomy over my body. How do I get it? I just let go and allow the energy to go through me and the speech to go and the actions to come, and I'm a part of the whole thing. So it's kind of like you look for autonomy over your own body, and then you go within and find yourself a part of the great vast. Or you look for being a part of the great vast, and what you find is actually yourself, because you're projecting yourself on everyone. Not necessarily in a bad way, but it's just the dissonance of being. With this lovely intro, let's get to the next thing Mercury does, and let's just see it from beginning to end. I'd like to see until when Mercury is in, this way in Taurus now, so Mercury is going quite quickly. Okay, it was I think only 2 weeks in Pisces, and now, this is the ingress to Taurus. So this is the end point, and this is April 3rd. Okay, we are in March 19. We literally do not have longer than perhaps 2 weeks of this whole phase of Mercury in Aries, which would be very quick and very potent. Mercury's ingress into Taurus does not make any aspects with anything. And now it's time to look back from March 19 to April 3rd. So it will have a trine with Lilith, a conjunction with Chiron, then a conjunction with Jupiter, and then a square to Pluto. So this is just like with Venus. Now we have Mercury going from sextiling Pluto to squaring Pluto. And for those of you, first watch my Venus ingress into Taurus, because she's doing the square to the trine. And now Mercury is doing the sextile to Pluto to the square with Pluto. And that is, I believe this still is considered synodic cycles. I'm self-taught, so knowledge arranges itself in its own way. Self-taught doesn't mean you do not learn from other people. It just means that the knowledge is not arranged in a linear fashion. So we're going from the phase where Mercury was conjuncting Pluto, being very informed of any underlying Plutonian structures, plutocracy, what we thought was conspiracy theory. Now the sextile, there's a way to be informed of the Plutonian and make our decisions, make our initiations, make our words informed of the structures of power, leading up to individuating from the Plutonian forces and the Plutonian structures. Okay? So the ingress into Taurus with Mercury in Taurus, which is very much Mercury slowdown, but slow down for a reason, because it's trying to individuate from basically the core of the atoms. So what we are expected is Mercury being in harmony with Pluto, Mercury speaking up in alignment with Plutonian forces, and then sort of growing into a certain understanding as it ingresses into Aries, and those understandings will be about Aries, the sense of self, wounds around creating a sense of self, Chiron, okay, philosophies and beliefs around who we are, and martial arts, Jupiter ruled by Mars, and gradually having learned all these things and applied, because Mercury in Aries is learning by applying, it forms a hands-on experienced worldview, or method, is more to say with Mercury. And with what it learned from Aries, it just applies it into Taurus, which of course is needing to slow down because we're not igniting something. And now we have sustainable effort that needs to be made intellectually with trial and error, the digging into the soil rather than kind of igniting the air, creating fire. So we are understanding that with Mercury we are beginning beautifully and ending with a bit more strife and conflict. There's going to be an intellectual thing to address around April 3rd or before that. Agreements we tend to now will need to be discussed not only during the Mercury retrograde in Taurus, which I discussed in another video, I believe, but also just by the merit of Mercury going from sextiling now to a planet to squaring it. Just knowing that, okay, just knowing that, what can we do with that? What can we do with that information? It's like, well, it's like if you're dealing with a Plutonian person or a teacher or a guru or a bureaucrat or whatnot, it's like, we seem to have a good conversation. Now, there's conflict coming up towards the beginning of April. There's something that we absolutely won't agree about. There's a chance that some Plutonian people will try to implement their power in abusive ways. Always exists. There's an understanding that right now we have a chance to transform what we can in pleasurable way. There still is going to be a conflict between us, a conflict of power, a conflict of methods of applying things, a conflict of praxis, because Mercury is praxis, a conflict of language. Okay, maybe right now we're saying certain words and we can see where we're coming from, but by the end of Aries there would be words that would create a lot of conflict. So think about when you're beginning a conversation that you know is triggering, and both sides, both parties expect the other party to have a process around that. So let's say, I don't know, some ignited word, something to do with gender. Let's say a cis woman, trans woman. Then you have two women talking, and one of them is just being patient towards the notion of having cisgender woman, as if there is such a thing as non-cisgender woman, and the other one is very much hoping that the notion of addressing as cis and as trans could yield along with cisgender to find her place and to be validated and acknowledged, and therefore acknowledge women who are not cis. So they're beginning this conversation between them, and each one hopes for the other to come to a conclusion that is more in favor of their side. Towards April, there would be a point where none of them would be able to tolerate the use of the word. One would not be able to tolerate the use of the word cis woman. You're like, can't we just say woman for heaven's sakes after the whole 2 weeks we've been talking about this? And the other one would say, well, can't we just say trans woman when we're addressing trans women, and cis woman when we're addressing trans? Like, I've been so accommodating, I've been listening to your arguments, I've been listening to your fears, I've been addressing all that. Can we just agree on this particular thing that was there from the beginning? That is just a typical argument that you might experience with the square to Pluto. So what you're tolerant towards right now, you won't be as tolerant 2 weeks from now, and that's something that needs to be addressed. So it can be a certain agreement that if you sign a certain agreement now, expect that there can be something that you would need to reassess. Or if you're expecting some sort of a change in your agreement, there is something at the beginning of April that you have to deal with. Where would the forces go? Well, you need to look at the eclipses. The eclipses are heading from Taurus to Aries. So the notion of women, femininity, like I said, it's not a good idea to question anybody's definition of self. So it's going to be in favor of those definitions of self that we have not been accommodating for, at least for the next 9 years. Because Rahu is about to go Aries with Aries in Aries. So my notion, like my word out to everyone, including my friends and family, if somebody calls themselves a ball of salad right now, don't question that, because you can die with this definition. Like they will fight it to the death because they identify with as the sense of self. Why would you want to die over a bowl of salad, right? Um, and so, funnily enough, it's in my second house, and I love salads. So, like, if people will find it difficult for me to eat salads or to like, I can expect something like that. Like, why you're making that expense? It's like you really don't want to be around me, and you won't be around me if I'm not having my bowl of salad. So that is the joke that can become real. Um, how can you prepare yourself? Well, not really, because we don't like there is a sense of something that we don't know, um, and and just understanding if you just go by I'm giving it so and so time and be prepared for okay what happens if I'm not met with that agreement, what how where do we go there, what happens in case there is an individuation crisis, um, then that will happen and that will need to be addressed. Now, other than the sextile, the big frame, okay, is the from the sextile to the square. So the journey of tolerance to conflict. Okay? And remember the word tolerance. The word tolerance is important with Aries. With Aries, we don't have, it's not about radical acceptance. I tolerate you. I tolerate you thinking differently from me. I would fiercely fight for you to able, like I would risk my life so that you will able to speak up, but I would also fiercely fight what you're saying because I disagree with that. That's Aries. And whoever you think it is agreeing with you now is just tolerating you, and that's mutual. Whether it's your landlord, your partner, your spouse, your mates, your accountant, whatnot, you're just tolerating each other right now. You're not agreeing. And then there would be a certain point where um, every person is going to no longer be able to tolerate. Um, and so there would be a decision that has to be made. And that decision involves facing power and finding your power. Okay? Because Pluto honors authenticity and honors truth. When that attempt is, Pluto is not easily tricked or swindled. It's just patient. Like it's going to give you the time and energy to come to your senses. It's just patient. It will not tolerate lack of authenticity around things. So Mercury with the sextile can bring a sense of authenticity. But then, even after you're being authentic, then you understand you're just tolerating each other, and then that individuation must happen. In personal relationships, it can be a sense of if one of you is trying to impose a certain opinion on the other person, there can be a crisis revolving that, so that both people can be accommodating and the sense of truth can be met. It just happens through crisis rather than through like being infatuated with each other's experiences and allowing the transformation to happen and occur naturally. What do we have within this frame? So before we even touch on Chiron and Jupiter, we have another planet that is very much associated with raw instincts of the body and communicating from them, the wisdom of our instincts rather than our cognition. And this planet is Lilith. Lilith in Leo, like I said in my previous videos, in my video with the Venus ingressing into Taurus, Lilith in Leo is about clearing the heart and basically acting your heart's desire. It's performing your heart's desire. Leo is performative. Lilith is the natural instinct. What is the organ most related with Leo? Is the heart. What happens? The seat of the soul, when all blocks are removed, when it can be vulnerable, open, you can wear your heart on your sleeve and you perform with your heart, fully open and vulnerable. I do not, I do not envy the person who would mess with the vulnerability of the heart of anyone during these transits, during Lilith in Leo. Lilith in Leo defends her or his safety to be vulnerable. And we have a trine relationship between Mercury and Lilith. So people will be speaking their hearts out. People will be addressing their own vulnerability. And it should be safe to do so. So one example I can give that I don't know that delineate that, but the minute I began to give this example, it was like concrete case. When I was with my psychologist, there was a notion where he said there is a part of you, he called it crispy, that is vulnerable. I was ingressing into Milito, and he said that my vulnerability inspires, it's difficult to translate into English, hurt, sadistic, basically sadistic desires in him. Okay? And because he was also acting it out and not just saying, then I had to go outside with that, which yielded an entire crisis to do with energy, blah, blah, blah. But what I said was like, hey, I should not feel unsafe to be vulnerable. Like one of the things that are important for me is to be able to be vulnerable. I should be safe to be vulnerable. And so should you, right? So how do we grow with love? Because I'm going to go here, I'm going to go out of this room, meet people, and play now dynamics. Another patient is going to come out to go and play the same dynamics. How do we solve a problem? Okay, how do we grow with love? And the notion of the need to be safe, to be vulnerable. It's like, no, I'm not supposed to have to protect my heart from you because you are a man, because you're my psychologist, because we have energy sex, because I don't know what. I don't care. I'm not supposed to not feel safe to be vulnerable with you. If we talk about, I was healing sexual, offense in childhood, then being a victim of that, then the notion was more generalized to a woman, a man, or anyone should not be afraid to wear her heart on a sleeve, to be vulnerable. We should not be afraid to be vulnerable. It's not just about, you need to act like an animal so that men won't attack you. No, we also want connection. We also want vulnerability and to be safe in this vulnerability. This also means that me as a woman need to honor the vulnerability of people around me, of men around me, and so on and so forth, and need to address how can I grow so that it is safe for me to be vulnerable, but also safe for others to be vulnerable around me, and to make sure that that happens. But absolutely, I will not accept that I would need to harden my heart so that somebody won't attack me, or so that things won't get to me, so that this or that. No. Eventually I would want to have intimacy, I want to have good sex, I want to have, and those entail vulnerability. Lilith in Aries is just that. Mercury here is words that are actions. So words that are actions that support the feeling safe to be vulnerable. Okay. The sun here is already exalted, it's already in Aries. So it's a great energy for words, agreements that ensure the safety of people to wear their heart on a sleeve. If I'm a gay person, there shouldn't be a problem for me to express that to my workplace, to my partner, to my family. It's like I should not have to worry about being vulnerable with people or any other type of vulnerability or insecurity. Okay. Let's say a person is insecure about something around themselves. They should not have to fear to be vulnerable and mention this insecurity, that should not be played on. And the type of vulnerabilities we have is around our sense of self because it is Aries. Should not, sometimes we have vulnerability around who we are. Okay, Mercury being language. Okay, I have Chiron in Gemini, it's Mercury ruled. Anytime I speak, I will have different mannerisms, different energies. There would be something around my voice that would change. I should not have to be like justifying that. Like the elephant is in a room, okay, we address that. And that is not something I should fear to be vulnerable about or how I sometimes feel awkward about. Because that's the sense of self, and my language and my communication are weird, grossly weird. It's not even any pathology or any diagnosis, it's just weird. And that's just the elephant in the room. Okay, so that can be something about the speech, okay, the sense of self, or like who I am, this is how I speak. This is how I communicate. It's weird, that's who I am. Anybody trying to bicker at that or to make fun of me for that or whatnot, it's like, you're just making, it's like, would you make fun of a person in a wheelchair? Would you make fun of a person who's neurodivergent? It's like, it's so fucking odd. And the sense of self with Aries being who we are, can also be, because it's ruling the head, how we think. So that can be both addressing a certain wound around the clarity of mind. Let's say people who take certain drugs, or people who are neurodivergent, or I can talk about my ability to calculate. I was watching Patrick doing this calculation of a chart, and I'm like, I would make 1,000 of mistakes trying to calculate like the bill when I go shopping at the groceries. Like, you show me a chart, I begin to analyze it. Same with an equation. If I understand what the components in the equation mean, I even got to fix people's certain mistakes that they made, not because I knew how to calculate, but because I understood what the equation means. And I was like, no, this cannot be here, this has to be here. But the function, the faculty of mind that is computation, is something that that's just the one that I carry. Okay, it's just something to tend to do. If I had to excel at calculating something correctly, that I would not be eligible to pass the course. I would always need consideration from that. I would always need to be able to go around that. While other people can do that without a calculator, and that's like, so this can be your ability to computate, it can be your ability to think clearly about something. And one of the things we need to pay attention to is the ableism we have regarding faculties of the mind. For me, for example, I have Mercury in Aries, opposition in Pluto. So whenever I have crisis in my life, and it was my 7th and 4th, I would go to the Pluto, and Pluto is in my 9th house, and I will dig deep to the core of the issue, and then I would have a new scientific theory around it, or I would discover science around it, and this is how I would cope with that. But for other people, that is not available. Intelligence, the ability to process something emotionally, that for me, unless someone holds me or hugs me or gives me energy, I'm not very likely to have it, and I would block this attempt to process something emotionally for a lot of my life. So that is also something that we need to pay attention to. The whole notion of, let's say, I don't know, men or women are emotionally disabled, and not from a notion of acknowledging neurodivergence, but it's like, oh, they're emotionally disabled, they're emotionally immature, they're emotionally like that. Not with these transit. And the trying to Lilith can allow us to accommodate in our heart for our vulnerabilities. None of us is perfect in the mind. Okay, Einstein made mistakes in calculation. Feynman felt stupid his whole life because he had Mercury in Taurus. It didn't stop him from discovering the things that he discovered. None of us is perfect in the mind. None of us is a rational thinker. There is no such thing like, the A-bomb diplomacy crisis is very much a good example of how players that we defined as rational players and irrational players, this definition is very artificial. Yeah? How does a country that surveils all of its citizens and the citizens of its ally abroad and within the state, the number one country in surveillance, how is it a rational player, the United States? Okay, so those type of intricacies. So this is, while this is a blessed effect, the trying to live it is a blessed effect. It's also a very cleansing effect, and it's cleaning your room, cleaning your heart. A lot of people will be saying a lot of things that would trigger a lot of other things. Okay, and that's a separating conjunction from the sun. So all of that will be very much related to how we see things, to the heart. Also, the type of solar figures, so that can be leaders, that can be people who shine, that can be solar figures that are Martian, so certain generals can be put to question or being held accountable, or alternatively being asked to be acknowledged, okay? Being asked to be acknowledged for your Martian abilities or for your Martian qualities. If I talk about the Me Too as being Me Too veteran, so it's like being asked to be acknowledged as Me Too veteran, both on the performative emotional level, and if it's my second house, on the resource level. Like, hey, I'm a veteran in as much as anyone. I deserve the rights of veterans because I served my country in favor of this issue, and I volunteered to do that. It just happened. It's like, so how the social fighters or Martian fighters that are doing a social agenda, they're also veterans, and they're also needing to be acknowledged for the well-being of the populace that they're a part of. And that can sound very weird to people, but it's also the part of the activism. It's like, hey, you generals don't get to decide something just because you're in that structure. I'm as a Martian as you are outside of that structure, because your structure is doing human trafficking, because your structure is doing things that are counterproductive to you fighting the way that is actually carrying fruits, rather than isolating our, body of populace, whether that's a state or another, because you make stupid decisions and break human rights where you shouldn't be, and so on and so forth. Or the other way around, because you're not making decisions. Now we can go. So after we cleared our heart, okay, there was tolerance, and then we began to clear our heart. You can understand from this perspective and from this timeline how the clearing of our hearts that happens with words, with Mercury trining Aries and the Sun already being in Aries, Mercury trining Lilith in Leo, with the ruler of Lilith being conjuncting Mercury, applying to conjunct Mercury in the sign of the Sun's exaltation. We understand how a lot of people are very confident to speak radically and just clear their hearts about something. And as disinformation and the magnitude of awareness begins to sink in, Mercury begins to apply to Chiron and later to Jupiter. Okay? So think about it as a discourse. Okay? We're sitting to discuss. So we said we both came with good intentions to understand what we're thinking. And then we tolerate each other, and then each of us clears our heart. What I believe, what you believe. What you believe, women should not be singing in the army. I mean, you can't both expect religious and Orthodox people to serve in the army and have women singing there. What I believe, you should really listen to people who disobey illegal orders rather than send them out to anti-Semitic funding, because that is not in alignment with what you're trying to achieve in the army, and that is against human rights. And that really pertains also to the notion of women who speaks against atrocities that were done in the workplace, because it is another fracture of the fractal of the structure of the army, of the church, even though it's a Jewish state. And now our tolerance and our clearing of our heart, and just where we expect to have more intimacy, Okay, and just where we expect to have intimacy, not just in the sense of like erotic, but in the sense of intimacy, connection, understanding. Oh, my heart is clear. You think, oh, my heart is clear now. And now we really get the extent of how deep the valley, the gap, the mountain, the ocean, the mountain within the ocean, and the myriad of volcanoes erupting between us in attempts to bridge where we're coming from. Okay, so you were hoping I would wear a veil and shut up, and I was hoping you would give me a disc and the welfare that I need for serving in the army in favor of women's rights and the listening to people who disobey legal orders. And so, how do we bridge that? Okay, this is where Mercury goes into Chiron, conjuncts Chiron, and Chiron addresses the wound we have around the sense of self. So if, to continue the previous example, you can say, okay, the wound I have as a masculine person of conceiving my masculinity, a part of my masculinity was I served in that and that unit. I was from 669, I was from 8200, I was in the Marines, I was in that, and how my masculinity and identity is so related to that. Or I conquered that and that, these and that women that actually were raped and human trafficked. So from my point of view, so it's like there's a wound around the sense of self of all the parties involved. Okay, whereas the other parties, like I would have like my wound around whenever I try to express my Martian abilities. It's like either you're no longer a woman or you're a woman that people fear. Both things are not desired at the end of the day. And now now you're expecting me to emasculate my femininity if you want me to put on a veil and not sing or not speak. Like, how do you expect me to be sexual with you if I can't speak up? But it's like, oh, but when you speak up, I feel emasculated. And that's the Chiron wound that Mercury addresses with agreements, with words, with language, with law, and the formation of laws, and with inventions. Okay, should we invent a robot that gives you whatever sexual fantasy you like, whether as a man or as a woman? Or should we invent something that can translate our intentions as we speak? So, or an algorithm that can find that can suggest place we can agree upon or see things in the same way as we try to communicate. Like, where should we go from here? That's also on the technological level. There is also a sense of a technological wound can arise that hurts the sense of self. It doesn't have to be linking, because I don't see Mercury doing anything other than conjuncting Chiron, but it can definitely be there's this wound around technology. Okay, we're too attached to social media, or we're too attached to our cell phones, or it's like every time the conversation is difficult, you need to get on the plane and start flying. Okay, that what helps, It's like you want to get on the plane and start flying, but the engine is not working. Okay, Mercury is not retrograde, but Chiron Mercury can create that something is not working. There's a wound to some technology. Okay, you want to just go on YouTube and scroll around and watch some video to relax from this argument or to relax from the scene, and there's no internet connection. And so you have to find new ways to tackle this wound that Chiron brings to your surrounding. You need to see what house it is in. Okay, so. And here we are already on the phase of we were tolerant, and then we spoke our hearts out. Then we said, okay, let's try to bridge things, and there's a wounding around the thing that could allow us to bridge things. And those things usually happen because the conflict is even deeper than we thought. The next aspect is Mercury-Jupiter. And remember, this thing can happen between countries, between best friends, between colleagues, between partners. romantic partners, between families, it's all around. Okay, you need to think, where is Aries in my chart, where's Leo in my chart, where's Capricorn in my chart, and how those intermingle. All of that when Mars is right now ingressing into, only now, Mars is right now in Cancer. So we had half of this with Mars was still in Gemini, so there was still connection between that Mercury and Mars, although frictional. And now Mars is in the sign of its fall. Now, a lot of us have been waiting for Mars to finally ingress into Cancer because it was in Gemini for a millennia. Okay, but Mars in Cancer is very emotional. Now it is the ruler of Mercury. So our words, we're not only are we not as fun and humorous as before. Like we could laugh at ourselves. Previously, we could laugh at ourselves. You know, we could laugh at the differences between us. We could laugh at what makes, like, at the wounds around our sense of self. But now Mars is way more emotional. Mars is an MO, and what we try to communicate goes through this is what rulership does. It's like there's something controlling this line of activity that's going elsewhere and is changing how communication is being brought out to the table. And now we were tolerating each other, we were clearing our hearts out and finding humor in the situation that we're not nearly as close as we were to agreeing about anything. And when we tried to address that something technologically didn't work, and Mars also was about to go Cancer, or already ingressed into Cancer, now we're in really, Cancer is being a cardinal sign. It's like a spring of fresh water that is now being polluted. Somebody menstruated into the fresh water of the village. Okay, that because Mars is blood, menstrual blood as well. So it's like now it's gotten even more emotional because one party finds this blood sacred and the other is triggered because it's reminding of many things, and the one party is like, oh, you don't like women because you don't like our blood, and the other party is like, I want to drink water. Okay, and that is a very, it's a very extreme example. And the degree, the 18 degrees, okay, according to, this is an interesting, because Jupiter is a benefic. But what is a benefic? A benefic expands things. Jupiter in Mars signs expands conflict. Now, from a holistic point of view, you can say you want to expand the situation, you want to grow the situation until it brought to the surface so it will be dissolved, because something can only grow so much before it begins to evaporate. Okay, so you're going to accelerate the growth so that something will dissolve. And this is more of a holistic view of how to tackle things. If somebody is having a grudge with you and you're like, I don't know, philosophical martial artist, one of the approaches that you would do is to address that and to bring that into fruition. So they finally say, what is it that they have against you? And now it's in the air and it's like a balloon. It's like they express all the rage that they had against you. And now because we are Aries, we're talking about Aries, the flame dissolved in as much as it was ignited. It's like now they can be calm. Because the fire, they took the fire out. The fire is out, now we can return to balance and speak more clearly. However, the 18 degrees, and this is the degree that, this is already pertaining to the degrees theories that it's actually done in Placidus. So I don't know how much will apply, but this one is a degree that is particularly not good for good deeds. Okay? On the one hand, we have a conjunction between the planet of philosophical expansion and optimism and the higher good, and the planet of communication, trade agreements, and so on, and also children. But the 18th degree brings an especially difficult energy with this conjunction. It doesn't make any other aspects, so it's not a conjunction that works with anything. It's also not triggered by the moon. And that is something to pay attention to, because the moon was not triggering any of that. Like, the moon is not triggering, all that I say is happening in the background, and it's triggered more by the sun being in Aries. There's a luminary in Aries, so we're gonna see that, but it's not gonna be as felt as with the moon, like applying. In this point, what is likely to happen is the conflict would be exaggerated, even in a way that can be with crisis. On a mundane level, can also be a bit bloody. Like, that can happen, so that we are ushered into the conflict that we like. Whatever we try to do to not get into the conflict, we must find our power here. Okay? Mercury must find the power here in the face of Pluto, where we're getting to the final square, the ingress into Taurus. So anything we try to do this month is preparing us for a slow and steady and gradual revelation, step by step, bit by bit, of Mercury going in Taurus and going retrograde in Taurus, as it individuates from the plutocracy, from Pluto in Capricorn. Okay. There is going to attempt to have a quick solution. That is no. Yes. There's going to be a fated event or a fated course sequence of events that is people trying to find a quick solution. Even concrete example, I need to renew my contract. Okay, it's not unlikely that somebody wants to charge more rent. I already have other things to do with my, I ordered my shoes and the like matching whatnot. That I have these 4 payments to go. Yeah, there's only so much I can accommodate, and I still need to buy food. I cannot accommodate a lot. Now that person, maybe something, with the bank's crisis, maybe they lost a lot of money. Maybe they want to have somebody living here. Maybe they don't know what to do exactly. So there's something that's about to happen. Okay? And right now there's a fated course of like, I don't feel like looking for another place. They don't feel like looking for another tenant. However, there is a fated attempt to have a quick solution. And whatever happens, even if a contract is signed, there's going to be some sort of things that were tolerated up to by both parties up to a certain point. Okay, it's my second house, so it's probably about money or finances or something like that. And yeah, it's very like it can be that somebody wants to raise the rent, or somebody, I don't know, wants to do something or whatnot, or that I was able to tolerate not investing or not fixing certain things, that it was tolerable up till to a certain point, and now it's becoming a toll on me financially that I cannot accommodate for. And when there's a fated attempt that both want to hush the flames and just continue with this on and not tackle this right now because we're all being tired of too many things altogether. Yes, that's one concrete example how two people that truly respect each other have interests and have the limit of tolerance that they can reach. So for my place is the second house, there's a limit of tolerance that I can have to pay rent to begin with, and not like paying payments for my land, And from the other perspective, there can be a different, tolerance to like expecting not to have to invest more, all the while you have a property that does need to be rejuvenated and to be tended to on a yearly basis. Or if you're living with a place that the water is, that the water blocks certain things that heat the water. So like even if you're turning the heater on, things change. It's like, okay, you need to address that. This is a part of the property that you own, and it doesn't change when you get tenants in. Or the fact that something happened in your bank account does not mean that the person who is a tenant can accommodate for your investments portfolio. And those are just concrete examples that we may see. Other types of concrete examples that we may see can be between nations. There are the attempts to have, and this is where I expect things to inflame when Mercury ingresses into Taurus, which was also Ukraine. The attempts to bridge between Russia and Ukraine, and between the East and the West, because we're beginning to have what could be a clash of civilizations. And when we talked about the clash of civilizations, this is a term I don't remember. Francis Fukuyama was the future, like the end of history, but there was another, I don't remember who talked about the clash of civilizations. And when we teach the clash of civilizations, we teach it in the context of the East and the West, and the hope that there can be bridging and that people will come to enlightenment and to more democratization and progress and so on and so forth. But there's a flip side to the clash of civilizations, and that is if the West is beginning to be more right-wing, conservative, let's oppress the womb and everything that's related to the feminine, the East has been doing that way longer. Like you don't even have an alternative to offer on a global scale to even have a clash of civilizations. And that particular global situation is altering the clash of histories from East and West to women, queer, and others. Okay? Or, yeah. It's not about even if you're a man or woman. If you're a woman that thinks sex, not gender, you're with the other section of history. Okay? If you are a man who acknowledges he's masculine and feminine and whatnot, you're in with the other section of history. Okay, with the opposing section of history. And those sections of histories only begin to have their clash of histories. Think about a simple thing, if even a very admired colleague of mine, okay, Austin Coppock will quote Jung, I would quote Sabina Spielrein. Because I know that a lot of the things that we think is Jung is actually Sabina Spielrein, who was his patient. And we're not doing any enmity, okay? So imagine that with, how would I argue with Jordan Peterson? Or how would a transgender woman argue with a woman who believes in sex, not gender? And who would we quote? Okay? If somebody tries to quote Brecht to me today, I would say, well, Brecht, he stole from everyone he was sleeping with, and God bless him, he slept with everyone. So I cannot say Brecht because I don't know who wrote it. I say somebody that Brecht stole from. It's very likely, surely he had his own ideas, but he stole from so many people without mentioning or giving credit that they cannot say Brecht. Okay, those clashes that are forming in our teachings, in our thought, in who we acknowledge, and who we give rights to. Okay, think about creative rights as well. Um, Here with Mercury, Jupiter, it's like, you see alternative healers quoting Osho. It's like, how can you quote Osho about anything when he raped so many people who happen to be women under his praxis? Like, I cannot learn anything about Osho without taking into account that he was a serial rapist. So surely he cannot tell me about what my sexual fantasies are, or how does it correlate or not correlating with having a sexual offense experience, because he's the offender. Okay, of course he's going to see these things differently than a person who escaped sexual offense will see them, or went through sexual offense will see them. So there is a lot of, and here we have Saturn again, because this is learning from our gurus, learning from the people who taught us history, and there is clash of histories going into that affects all that we are doing. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, I think, I don't remember who I quoted, and I got a response from a feminist woman who told me, oh no, this person was, I don't know, beating his wife or whatnot, and I was like, oh, okay, then I need to adjust. All the things, all the people that I was learning from, I'm not talking about my contemporary colleagues, but people that were affecting my thinking. Who knows how many of them were rapists? Who knows how many of them were sexist? And how do I separate the teaching from the pathology? Because the pathology affects the way we see the world. And also, to that vantage point, it was not a pathology. Okay, the world was tending to certain things and not others. This happens all the time. Yeah, so the whole passage of Mercury in Aries, while quick, is not innocent, and is very potent, and it's all leading to an escalation of conflict that has to do where people identify themselves with either their opinion, their action, their praxis, both of which need to change, transform, and adjust. It doesn't matter who you are today and what you think today, there's a lot to learn. And the individuation process will happen as Mercury ingresses into Taurus, and then it goes to step by step, trial, error, of forming even an opinion on the subject. Because there, the ignition of something begins to form ground. Okay, you land, and as you're stepping on the land, you're learning what it's actually like to step on the land. Okay, I can have all kinds of ideas and philosophies and initiations, and then I get the chance that I know, okay, well, you want land here, there is a land that you can stay in. Okay, great. Now what happens with property tax? Now what happens with infrastructure? Now what happens with defending the land? Now what happens with the natural creatures on the land? Now what happens with all these things? And those things are going to be individuating from Pluto. Okay? Because on the one hand, we do need infrastructure. Let's say I want to dig up a well. Okay, and then there will be a law that says you cannot dig up a well. You're draining the Earth, the planet, from its natural waters. You cannot dig up a well. You cannot water your plants. Say, okay, I will pick up water from the roof. No, you cannot do that. You need to filter the water, and so it's like, okay, I will filter the water. Tell me what do I need to filter the water, and I will filter the water, and I will have water for me, have water for... No, you cannot do that. Why cannot you do that? Okay, and then we begin to have this argument, or with the Taurus is very likely to be material possessions. Okay, It's like, oh, you can have, oh, sure, this is your gold, but we need to keep it. Okay, why can I not keep it? Oh, because there are people who steal. Okay, then I will have insurance. Okay, but for the insurance we need to do that and that and that. And then there's begin to be an understanding of what is the measures that we are taking. Pluto is already going to be in, Pluto here ingresses already into Aquarius. What is the steps that we are taking that are in favor of our safety, and what is just surveillance? And of course, the subset of both surveillance and safety is very big. What we do to protect ourselves can also be the means to surveil us, or what we do to protect ourselves can also be surveilling others. And so the third option that we made is now having to face a different challenge. So if the government was the challenge, now we have something spying. You know, I mentioned that a week ago I was lying on my porch, catching the sun, and I usually am used to having combat planes every now and then. And now I saw just something small, shiny in the sky, going to the left. Then, and after a while, another small, shiny, flickering in the sky, going to the right. I didn't hear anything, so I was like, okay, whatever that thing is, obviously it's probably not an alien. And that can be a satellite, that can be a drone, that can be something that is used to that can be something as simple as the drones that are used to record for Google Maps, that shows you when you want to see, you know, if I want to visit someone in a country that I've never been before, I can go to Google Maps and I will have the picture and say, oh, this is the place. So this is very comfortable. Okay? It's also safer if I want to ask people, where is this place? What do you know about this place? Who is this place? Where are you going to? Who? Look, this is how the place looks like. This is where I will be staying. Okay? Then there can be people who can be there for me. On the other hand, it can also mean, you know, if I'm lining my porch in my bikinis, then somebody can tune into that and sell that in Pornhub, or whatnot. And that, or that can be means of surveillance. Like, what does this person do in every single hour of the day? I'm like, well, you know, privacy is not something we can rely on with Pluto in Aquarius, and that yields both certain type of radical acceptance that we're being asked to have, but this is already Pluto in Aquarius. And so Mercury will need to decide what are the safety needs, because if the safety needs are privacy, you're not likely to have that. If you need privacy to be safe, you're not likely to have. What you're very likely to need is radical acceptance. And then you saw that, for example, you know, if I have my landlord wanting to come in to look at the apartment, all of my Jupiter, Pluto, Venus, Uranus altars had to go. Or otherwise I'll have a lot of explaining to do to an already very stressed landlord. For how long will I be able to tolerate that? And alternative, for how long will they be able to tolerate the weirdness of their tenants? Okay, so we are heading to a conflict heads on, and this conflict is at the borderline of the sense of self and the land that you stay on. Not a very particularly easy time to be alive. All of that, just fractions of you know, a month before we have the eclipse on the 29th degree of Aries. You know? And if we're already talking about something in Aries, then the video for the new moon in Aries, I don't know if it dropped today or it's about to drop, but I mentioned this new moon being on the 0 degrees of Aries and how potent and how important and how this and how that. It's potent and important and how this and how that for the next 300 years, not for the next 2 weeks. Okay? So don't expect, if you're starting a relationship, if you're starting a new project, if you're starting, I don't know, anything that you start today, don't expect things to go smoothly from the get-go. And don't expect what you're beginning to have the same face and the same shape and the same idea and the same, land, 300 years ago. And yes, you are beginning something that will have implications long term. That long term, whether you'll be alive to be there or not, or you'll be alive in another incarnation. So it's very fast, okay, only around 2 weeks. Um, but I'm also seeing a fated course of events that does not allow for smooth operations. And it touches the core of who you believe you are and the land, the resources, the bank, the connection, the food that you eat. And separating from the planet that rules dissolution of boundaries and applying in a very tension relations with the planet that govern authenticity of the self. Like, for example, if you're a trans person trying to hush up any differences so that you can just stay in the house that you're currently living in and not have to move around, or if you're a meat eater, okay, trying to stay in the community that you're in, let's say you had to take on eating for some, nervous system issue, and you're in an ecological community, okay, where you're supposed to not eat, because there's only so much that you can do before this is out, before the conflict is headstrong. And this is a potent conflict. Okay? It's who I am and where I am. It's who I am and where I am. It's what I do to be me. It's not what I do for a living. Okay, if this means your career houses, oh my God, like, this is beyond unionizing. It's not unionizing to get a better job or to be accommodated for in the Industrial Revolution. It's like, I am my career. You telling me that I cannot be me? By telling me that I cannot do. If I think about the Nuremberg laws that prohibited Jews, but everybody that was not, white, Irish, or whatnot, not that there existed anything like that with Hitler being Austrian with the bomb. But the Nuremberg laws touch the prohibition on profession, amongst many other things. Okay, if you have Aries in your 10th house, right now, at first it is the government, then it is the masses, because the masses are not the other type of masses. And finding your power, both within the structure of the regime and within the decentralized system that is called people. So if you think about social media, okay, whichever groups of people you're around is going to determine your experience. And the joy was during the times of Capricorns, like, if I don't like this group, I'll go to another group. If I find out this part of myself, I'll go to that group or to that group. I'll always find a group that matches the new me. Or I will have these combinations of being in and around groups of not really belonging, depending on your personal experience. With Aquarius, the finding your flock can be intricate because there is a Pluto there. You think you found your flock, but somebody's being a guru that tries to be Osho, okay? Or there's humanitarian crisis going on, okay? Like, you need food. Where do they give food? At the mosque. Okay. Now you have to trim your fingernails. Now you have to cover yourself. Now you have to hide a lot of parts of your identity in order to eat. Or alternatively, you come point of view. Okay, you're very traditional, and the people who help you out are people that you don't even know how to get along with. There is this woman, I think her name is Yomi, but I don't remember like how it works, and I don't want to mispronounce that. She escaped North Korea, and she's talking about the United States, and she talks about this, funny enough, to Jordan Peterson. One of the things she said, I'm coming to, I think it was California University or Columbia University, I'm sorry. And she says, I'm sitting in a class and everybody mentions their pronouns. And what they want is for me to remember everybody's pronouns. I don't even know their names. I don't even know their, maybe the name and the pronoun. I don't even know them as a person. And I'm expecting to remember, I don't know, 300 pronouns. And it's like, how is, like, this is so challenging. How is this important? And, Jordan Peterson is, of course, going, accepting and supportive, and he's too annoyed by this pronouns because he's an old person as well. And it's very difficult to learn a new language and to have to remember this and not that, although it's good against Alzheimer's. My initial thought was, well, you own the fact that you can stay in the United States as a North Korean, largely to those people whose pronouns you find difficult to even understand. Why do you need to remember? It's the gays and the marginalized societies and the queers and the women and the trans women and the black women and the neurodivergent, disabled, and I don't know, person that, and the Gen Zs, that you own your ability to stay in the United States too. Because all them right-wingers, they will send you right back to where you came from. Or make you a sex slave in the United States. This is one of the, like, probably the number one country for human trafficking. So who's fighting who? Okay. And so that by honoring all that, what these women need to do to get where she is, and how strong she is, and how I never want to be in her shoes, and how compassionate I am for her thinking the way she thinks. But also, right? And so, what Mercury is tackling right now is that there will be a lot of people telling you that you own the right to be who you are right now because we struggled for you, because we died for you, because we this, because we that. But there's also the notion that if I was, let's say, I don't know, Me Too veteran, okay, I'm a Me Too veteran, and then somebody comes and I want to teach a class and I have to remember everybody's pronouns, and I find it a bit difficult. So I need to learn a new language, or I think because I'm, I guess, two-spirit, then it's beyond gender fluid, and then my whole view of gender has to do with the shamanic process of doing women, doing men, the man inside of me, the woman of the man inside of me, the man of the woman inside of me, and I meet a classroom of people that they are in completely different language about gender. Okay? It is my job to learn their language. It is my job to see, okay, these people think completely differently from everything that I have been taught. So it can be that my combat and my fight and, mein Kampf for being who I am and for the life, living space, I joke about it a lot. I invert the Nazi linguistics a lot. All these, that feminists are like Nazis and so on and so forth, so I joke around that. But it is my job to see, okay, the fact that I made the structure available for all these people that are in my classroom, or the fact that I even made it available, the structure of the way we are learning is so because I called for decentralization, does not entitle me to not learn from my students of what is the next phase that I may be in a challenge, I may be needing like a walking stick to cross, but I don't have any entitlement to tell these people, you own your freedom to me. It's like that you need to honor my effort does not mean that I should not advance with your worldview that is brought to the table and learn a new language, and at least learn where you're coming from to see what can I adopt, what can I change, what can I alter about my language, the way that I think about gender, and the medicine, okay, the medical field. So many things are changing now. The concept of time, the this, the that. So it can very well be that all the ancient knowledge that brought me here today also needs to be revised. It's what we need to do. And depending on what it hits, it can be more difficult for you to make that transition, or to even understand, or to even conceptualize what the transition is like. So that's the Mercury into Aries. It begins lovely, midway is lovely, and then we have the crisis point that escalates to the point where we have to apply our agreements and language on new ground. And that is Taurus, and this application is conflictual. Okay, you learn from finding your power mentally. Here's the mental struggle, and this struggle is happening every time Mercury is moving fast, and Mercury is squaring Pluto. Okay, so this is the opening individuation structure, and then there would be the closing square. Okay, there would be the opposition, and then the trine, and then the closing square, with Pluto further down the road, and Pluto will already, I believe it will still be in Aquarius, but not sure. So hope you enjoy this. As to houses, why not? Let's go for it quickly. Begin with the ascendant here. Ascendant Gemini, that would put Aries in your 11th house. So the point of conflict has to do with certain agendas. If you are a person who is a social freedom fighter, then you will see that you come in the spirit of tolerance, but to clear the heart, all people need to speak, and what comes out of this is a lot of rubbish of both sides that would need to be asserted and assorted, and that is no longer something that's done with toleration. There's an actual conflict, there's an actual argument, there is an actual trial and error process that would be more intense than all of you desire for that to be. And that's just fated. So that can be a conference, that can be arguments around colleagues, that can be social cause, that can be dreams. If you're crowdfunding, 11th house is also the house of crowdfunding. So I would not launch anything that is not of a provocative. For example, if you're launching right now a project to fund for lands for the victims of the Arab Spring who were raped by soldiers who took Viagra, and you want the funding to be from Pfizer, this is a project that I would start now. But if you want to have crowdfunding for this elderly person that just needs an apartment to live in, and what you little did you know that this person is also being gay, and then you think, well, we need to accommodate for that. Should we hide it? Should we talk? Should we not talk? And then lo and behold, this person was also a sexual perpetrator, regardless of the fact that he was gay. Now the plot twists, but they still need a place to stay, and they need a place to not be jailed. So how do you accommodate for that? Okay, those are the kind of developments that can be. Pro tip, so halt for everyone, pro tip for everyone, all Aries signs, it's time to take that provocative step. Okay, Aries in general, it's time to think big. As big as you can probably imagine, and do something that will be a start of something that can be anchored on for the generations. That is, it's the kind of it's the trans woman that has a campaign to run for presidency in Iran. That's the kind of energy. Of course, there will be conflict, but you know that there will be conflict, and if you go headstrong, headstrong into, let's do this. Then that is the blessed effect. You know there will be conflict, so you know it's going to happen anyway. You're just heading into it right now because you understand that there's no way you could be tolerated or tolerate further down the road. Ascendant Cancer. Aries is in your 10th house. And so for you, remember what I talked about, my career being me? or doing me is also my career, my status, me as a boss, or relations with my father, and so on and so forth. That pertains to you. Okay? You might be dealing with certain rules and regulations that are tolerating your profession, but will no longer tolerate it further down the road. And further down the road is 2 weeks from now. So you're heading headstrong to a conflict to do with your career, with your status, with your image as well. If you have an immersion career, that can be if you have a career that's about doing something. Mercury is going to be about an active speech, the way you represent, what you do, whether it's the army or intelligence, or all those things related to or innovation, science, technology, innovation can also be that. So there can be some sort of limitation, some sort of lack of tolerance, both from within you and from your surrounding, your image in the world. This is a good time to go for the provocative. Like, this is a good time to be provocative, because you're going to have to deal with that anyway. If you try to go in the spirit of tolerance and do not go headstrong to the provocation right now, you're very likely to end up with an agreement, a contract, or a position where just 2 weeks from now, the first power conflict arises, and maybe you regret you weren't provocative to begin with. So this is my strategy for that. You might have a different point of view, but you're heading to a conflict, and the next house, Taurus, for you is in the 11th. So it will lead you to a place where you're what you do in conferences, if you need to crowdfund, or if you have certain presentation or something that you do in front of large podcasts or whatnot, those points, like when Mercury hits Taurus, there will be a lot of very confrontational, very argumentative, step by step, we're going to have to apply. So if you start with a provocation, willing to laugh at yourself, as well as implement what is actually true, which you will see it out during the process of Mercury in Taurus, I predict that to be a good strategy. If you try to preserve, knowing that you're heading to a conflict and you're psychologically ready for that, that can also be a strategy. It's like, okay, I'm going to start with tolerance. I know that's not going to work out, but I have it prepared for when that's not going to work out. That is okay. But do mind the square to Pluto. Think about this from the beginning. Ascendant Leo. So ascendant Leo, Aries is in your 9th house, and Lilith is in your 1st house. So anything to do with travel, academia, religious institutions or beliefs, and your worldview at large, your body tells you the truth. I might be speaking to the next media veterans, like I might be speaking to the legion of people who will have to do in their own way what I've done. And if that is you, then listen to the instincts of your body and perform your heart out. Perform your heart out. Defend your vulnerability by any means necessary. Not in the sense of I can't stand to be vulnerable, but in the sense of I should not have the problem to wear my heart on my sleeve in this place. Be it the mosque, the church, the synagogue, the ashram, the academia, anywhere you travel, it's that time to perform. Your body will, it's incredibly frightening. I can't, it's incredibly frightening, and it is a life or death. That being said, the heart is the seat of the soul. You will be sane by doing the insane thing right now. That's the only way you can achieve sanity. Even if you start, conservative, It will get to that. Do not think that it will not get to that, and you will maintain your sanity by doing the crazy things. The crazy act of speech is how you hold your sanity and your body and soul together during the coming months. So the sun exalts in Aries. So what you will get to see is that as things begin to escalate, you begin to shine. So you're in a very potent position. All Leo's ascendants, you're in a very potent position. Listen to your heart and perform your heart out. Show up as you are. It's going to be natural to you once you do this. Okay, it's going to feel almost ecstatic, cathartic, like you're on stage. Because maybe some of you are meant to do this. Maybe some of you were born within the shades of eclipses, leadership roles, whatnot. You're meant to do this. You're meant to do this. And this is absolutely fated. And remember that even if you choose to start with no provocation, just as things escalates, it's your time to shine, and you will shine provocatively. Here you will shine provocatively. Ascendant Virgo. Aries is in your 8th house. So how you invest your money, how you invest your energy, how you share energy with a partner, business or romantic. Leo rules your 12th house. Your energy boundaries. You should not be afraid to be vulnerable with a business partner. You should not be afraid to be vulnerable with your spouse around finances, investments, or the mutual energy that you share. The way you act in your investment houses is not afflicted, but affected by the need to wear your heart on your sleeve. You should not be afraid to be exposed to vulnerable investment portfolios. And that may entail, certain types of insurances, certain types of initiation, certain types of how do we safeguard, because we want to have investments that are speculative. We do not have any advancement, and not even advancement, but sustainability without speculative investment. We need to constantly recharge, recreate, innovate. To maintain clear waters in a growing society, we need to constantly innovate. We do not have clear waters without a clear stream of speculative investments always ready to go to try the next best thing to keep our water clear. We can't have that, okay? So you might be an advocate for that. You might have to emphasize this point, but as it goes to the praxis, it already goes to Taurus, which is your worldview. And you're going to have to apply your worldview hands-on, go through an early learning process. So if you even so much as attempt or even think about being agreeable in this time, it will tank, and the crisis will only be worse. If you even think about being agreeable at this time, it's true to everyone. Don't even think about being agreeable. Like, authenticity comes first. The authenticity will bless you. With Pluto, authenticity will bless you. You don't have to agree. But if you're authentically true to yourself, you will get respect. Ascendant Libra. So Mercury is going through your 7th house. This means any sort of partnership, okay, with enemies, with friends, with lovers, sleeping with the enemy, or the enemy that becomes a lover. Those will go through a communication phase where you understand that, to have a partnership, you tolerate each other. There's a place where you just adore each other, and there will always be those things that you just tolerate. Okay? They become intolerable. What you tolerate, now if you have been starting an affair or are starting an affair, or if you started an affair with, when Venus was in Aries, in your 7th house, then in the beginning of every affair, even if it's a business affair, there are the things you just love about each other. You just love the way you think, you just love the way you complement each other. You also love the differences of your opinion. They become less and less tolerable as the months progresses because you understand more of where the other person is coming from. You're speaking from your heart, you're clearing your heart out. Okay? And Leo is in your 11th. Okay, so it's going to be a very public disagreement. Or the public disagreements, the public heart pertains to your relationship. It doesn't necessarily mean, a third party. Sometimes the third party is society. And what you're doing with your partner goes through a certain transformation, and it is a fated one. There is an argument, look, if you both are authentic and you both are compatible, of course you will bridge this. It's just not going to be those easygoing phases of your relationship where you can rely on your partnership as a source you can let go and fall into and be safe in your vulnerability. Because there is a Pluto intervention. And so to sustain the safety in your vulnerability, you now need to speak the hard truths and be authentic even about things you're hiding or you're ashamed about. And that revelation of the heart is not leading to harmony and ease, but actually to a necessary conflict where you really need to assess the differences of opinions and power relations. And power relations, is a wide spectrum. Think about the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was the rise of the Facebook revolution. Social media was a new form of power that was rising to outthrow old forms of power. So there is some sort of similar act happening right now because there are going to be certain new technologies, certain new developments that are going to give rise to new forms of power that is more Martian, that is more active, that is more innovative, or to do with intelligence. It can be also, unfortunately, also surveillance. And that changes the power relations to a way that is not tolerable. Something needs to be done, and both sides need to address their genuine power relations with each other as of now. Okay? And that's to do with the change of Pluto also from Capricorn to Aquarius. Okay, now Pluto in Aquarius, it enters Aquarius on the 23rd. Now we are having a different discourse, a different disposition. Okay. If I think about the Me Too, okay, I think about where I was at the Me Too. Then I had Facebook, which I thought was powerless because nobody is watching, but apparently way more people watched than I believed. And so there was a need to reassess the power relations. Understanding that I also had a certain power here that could so much outthrow the opponent, so that they will be in a position that is not desirable also for me, because I don't want to give them a sense of helplessness, or else they think of themselves as the victim, right? And there was a need to reassess there. Okay, and then 2 years later, COVID. And now with COVID, if I think the people or lecturer or the leader that was used to staring to people in the eye, I have a class of 300 students, you stare them in the eye, somebody fumbles with their phone, you stare them in the eye, stop the lesson, the entire room stops, and you have this power of charisma. And that changes from a little Zoom window, okay, which people are not even forced to turn on the Zoom, and sometimes maybe you want them, maybe you don't want them, maybe the lighting is good for you, maybe the lighting is not good for you, and you have to exert the same power over the consciousness through other means. Now the medium has changed, and the power relations has changed, because a student can turn off the screen. You won't charm them with your charm, you won't traffic them to your instructor, and they might not even get. So if you have good power, they might not even get the good things that you try to teach. But if you have bad power, then they might not even be subjected to that power. Anyway, you feel emasculated or feel disempowered in the face of that. Okay. Or on the other extent, my psychologist. So when I was his patient, and he could say, nobody knows what energy is. Like nobody will believe you, right? The Amber Heart, nobody will believe you. So he was being Amber Heart. So at that point, I was thinking, okay, the whole thing what I was doing with my thesis proposal and the spirit and matter and so on, those are all things that all doctors, all people are afraid to even talk about. So even if there would be a psychologist, psychiatrist, social worker who would understand what I'm talking about, they would be afraid to speak. And then what happened during COVID? Everybody had to find alternative ways to meet each other because there was lockdown. And and there were literally workshops about shared dreaming, about energetic penetration, about astral projecting, and people meeting each other in the astrals. So this became common language. Okay? And so the assembly of power on a cognitive level changed, because if somebody tells me, oh, that doesn't exist, I tell them, are you up to date with the literature? Because you're being unprofessional and unupdated with the briefing that you need to have in your profession, okay? And that's something that was more difficult to say when any sort of non-dual experience was dealt with controversy, rather than, well, you can go to a workshop to learn how to do energetic penetration, okay? Of course, that entails new agreements, new this, new that. Something very similar is happening this month. Pluto is going from Capricorn to Aquarius. There's a new assembly of power relations. And to you, Librites, is very important because this happens in your house of partnership. Okay, so you're meeting that in a very personal way. You're seeing that with the woman or the man or the day that you're sleeping with the partner that you're having business, or with the conflict that you have with someone, be it a partner or an enemy. Ascendant Scorpio. Aries is in your 6th house. And that would make Leo in your 10th. Yeah. Aries in your 6th, Leo in your 10th. Well, for you, it can be something as simple as, pets. Or what you thought you can do for a pet, or what you thought you can do for others, or you as an employee, or you as having employees. There's something perhaps you were beginning, if you have a business, that can be your employees or your pets, if those are your employees. Let's say you have a YouTube around, your pets or something, and there are certain things that you would tolerate, but now wearing your heart on your sleeve, you can no longer serve the people in the same way. And that can be a very deep crisis that can affect your health. And that can also be it can also be the health of your boss if you are an employee that is affected here. Not so much, well, your health, can it be? It can be your health, but it's something that's either coming from a boss, and if you are afflicted in your health by a boss, you might need to litigate, and that you might try to resolve conflict in a certain way, but eventually you would need to litigate, or you would need to take some action to do with resources very soon, so that you can maintain your sense of self here. If your boss is threatening your sense of self, you're being narcissistic or so. Know 2 things. 1, you're not anybody's punch bag. 2, whatever they are doing, they're doing it from a sense of clearing their heart out. Okay, because there's Lilith in the 10th house. So it could be your image, you as a boss, or your boss. Okay, so your boss is not being ugly and arrogant in order to be mean to you. They're just trying to clear their heart out. That being said, their clearing their heart out should not be your absorbing their energy. And so there's a certain boundary here that need to be set. And there are certain structural limitations, Pluto, that need to transform and can no longer be tolerated. If you're trying to accommodate or to transform the system from within, good luck. When Pluto crosses into Aquarius, you find out that the problem persists outside of the structure. And so there's it's a whole lot of ball game. Yeah. Mars in your ninth, so this conflict is affecting both your health and your worldview. Okay, all of these things need to change. So you're very much transformed by this. And if you want to say, oh, for the sake of my well-being, for the sake of my sanity, I don't want to steer conflict, and for the sake of your well-being, you need to do just the opposite. All the while maintaining that even your narcissistic boss, if you are the person who's being perceived as a narcissistic boss, is not doing things to abuse people, but rather to clear their heart out. Again, Lilith is in the motivation to clear the heart out. If that pertains to erotic something, okay, it's not just the breakup that you need to deal with, but the decentralization of the workplace that you need to deal with, because it cannot be that every time your boss falls infatuated or you fall infatuated, you end up in a situation where they have way more power over you, but they are afraid that you have way more power over them, by the way, because the offender is afraid that they will be sued and they won't be believed, and you are afraid that you won't be believed because of victim blaming. Okay, so this all power relation situation, this is what needs to change. It's not just you're going to another workplace. No, it's not just that. And if you think about that, I will just go to another workplace, I will just have a different boss, I'll just fire my employee. No, there's a whole relation thing. You could be the boss there, okay? You could be the boss going with your son into the house of your employees. And if this is something to do with eroticism, then understand that the whole power relations need to change. So that you can be true to your heart and you can feel vulnerable and you can honor your vulnerability, but not disempower other people. So that was ascendant Scorpio. Ascendant Sagittarius. Aries is in your fifth. Leo is in your ninth. So the passage of Mercury through your fifth, it can both be a creative project that you do, conversation with your children, that there would be certain, if you teach children, then it's about learning how to set the boundary while not disrespecting their autonomy, and sees as their autonomy and what you see as their safety. It's a growing conflict. And so the notion of safety has changed in there, and it's leading to the way you're trying to protect your child. You should be trying to change the system. I think about, for example, the parent telling the child, don't go, I don't know, don't go drinking when you are at the party. Okay. And Shah says, why not? It's legal in our country to do so. And the parents said, yeah, but they can be rape drugs. Okay, what do you do so that I will not be affected by that? Well, you don't drink. My mom does not drink. Even if I drink water, they can put that in. And you as a parent, understanding that it's not about telling your child not to drink water. If they go to a party, because they don't have to drink alcohol, they can go to a party and drink water, and that happens. But it's a social structure that needs to change so that would not even be an issue. And if you think you can just tell your child, oh, don't do this, don't do that, and they will be safe. No, they will not. And that is something you want to address heads on. If you are the child in this case, you want to make clear, like the water example can be very good, because even if you bring your own bottle, like it doesn't like and the understanding that there are certain things that have to change, that you as a child can only do so much, and whatever you will do, there's something that has to change beyond you, Pluto, in the neighborhood in this case, or in the well, this is a bit more difficult because Pluto is in the second house. um, your values, you need to transform your values to be up to date with the reality, and it pertains to your neighborhood, to your siblings. If it's a child, you might need to protect them from certain siblings in a different way than you've done before. I'm not saying, God forbid, sexual stuff, but Lilith is in Leo, okay? Lilith is in Leo. That is the ninth house. If you're going to travel with your children, I can't, like, I want to say you want to be extra cautious, but it's beyond you being extra cautious. There's a societal change that needs to happen so that would be safer. And if it is you and your sense of romance and flamboyance and gambling, then again, if it's something that happens abroad, your heart will tell you the truth, and to execute that truth involves conflict. Okay? Whether it's you're gambling, or you're starting a creative project, which is a form of a gamble, or you're having a child, you will need, there's a conflict even about what you do as a hobby. Okay, you could be growing up in some place where, let's say you like to sing and you live in Iran, and you're a woman, so you like to sing, and that's your hobby. Or you're in the army and your hobby is singing, and you're just outside in a basement outside of the home, so you have time to do something that is leisure, and you like singing, and there's a conflict with your commanders, or like Orthodox people there. Your heart will tell you the truth, and it's not like, don't think that you can silence your voice here or silence your performance. Absolutely not. Like, it's not. It's heading headstrong to conflict, but it's conflict not with the enemy or the opponent outside, but the people around you. Ascendant Capricorn. Aries in your fourth house. Leo in your eighth. And Pluto ingressing to your second. Fourth house. There's something you tolerate about your family of origin, your home country, your homeland, motherland, and your house, the house that you're living in, that can no longer be tolerated. You're trying to shut up the differences, you're trying to speak your heart out, but it's escalating to a conflict. It's very likely to escalate to a conflict not during the conjunction of Mercury to Chiron, but the conjunction of Mercury to Jupiter in the 18th degree. Something happens. Because it's your family of origin, I do not see Venus here, so it's not your children. I do see the Sun, which is the eighth house, so that can be accountant, that can be someone you're sharing energy with. It can also be marriage partner. If it's home labor, if you're giving birth at home, there's a sort of conflict around that. So you need to be prepared for that. I know there's a lot of conflict around the belief of home labor. In Israel, we have a doctor who is in jail right now for assisting women to have home labor, and if there were complications, then assisting and escorting them to the nearest hospital. And he's in jail because he helped women to have more choice around the way they give birth. So this is something that's just ongoing. So if it's home labor, because eighth house can also be labor, and then the ruler in the fourth, it can be home labor. Um, I'm not saying you're moving. If it is your house itself, I'm not saying you're moving. But I am saying that, it's going from your fourth house to your fifth. There's something you're going to have to discuss with your children, or something to do with a creative project. You're going to need time to do a creative project, and you're going to need to set the boundary here. But the boundary is, ingressing from you being the person who needs to evolve to your values. Your values need to change. And they change into more open, decentralized values. Okay, so you're not, if your previous value was relating to your home was, either I adhere to the father, okay, the son, I adhere to the father, I adhere to the head of the family, that here is solar, or I am the head of the family, okay, I am your mother, listen to me, I usually love Megan Taylor, I detest this song. Like, it's totally emasculating. Your baby is not just a bum, 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 bum. No. And that being said, with all due respect to Megan Taylor, I think she made a series of amazing, like each video, each clip, each song is amazing. This song is horrid, in my opinion. But that can just be that. Like, you no longer can rely on, I am the head of the family, or I'm listening, I was born to the head of the family, now I am the head of the family. Or if you're married, okay, the solar figure in your life, okay, they are the head of the family. That will no longer be tolerated, and you're up to in Hebrew we say imut chaziti. It is a confrontation, direct confrontation, because this Mercury is about to approach Taurus. Venus is going to be around Uranus. Okay, that's the ruler of your fifth. So if it's someone you work on a creative project with, or if it is your child, or if you are the child. Okay, if you are the child and you're trying to respect your parents right now, you're going to have to, your values are going to transform. The way you see respecting your elders is going to transform completely. You might have to do it completely different way. And you can no longer tolerate that. It will no longer tolerate, because staying true to your heart brings you into conflict with either the head of the family of origin. Mercury can also be siblings, Jupiter, some teachers, some gurus, I don't know. So any wound in the family will both be addressed. Both people will speak their heart out, and instead of that steering more understanding, it would steer more conflict. And then Mars goes into Cancer, so everything's going to get fiercely emotional around this time. And with Pluto heading to Aquarius, you're going to need to have more space. Okay? Just as your child, or it can either be you're going to need to have more space so that you can do this creative project that you're about to do, or to have a child, okay? To have another child. Or it can be you have to have more space right now for yourself, and you can't be there for your children, and your child is going through a certain revolution, okay, because Venus is going to be with Uranus, so they're going to be extremely rebellious about something, and they also take up space, while your own values, you change the way you need space. There is a different type of space that you need right now. Your values are about to transform dramatically as Pluto ingresses into Aquarius. And you could no longer sustain your own family of origin, whether you are the parent or the family of your upbringing. If it's the family of your upbringing, perhaps you're having a child and you need the space of your own. And that child will also be a revolutionary. Okay, it may be their gender, maybe, I don't know, like that, there's just something like that child will need to take up space. Okay, and you get it from the get-go. Or if you are the parent in the situation, there's a crisis of values of the self. There's a way you take up, you're going to have to find in the next 20 years a way to take up space in the world that will allow you to do your creative endeavors in a way that is unusual. And that creates conflict with both the house that you are in, could be the structure, could be the people, could be communications, the way you communicate. You can no longer communicate in the same way, as well as Mercury ingresses into Taurus, there's a huge tension of communication between you and your children. You're going through a crisis of values, and just right now you need to apply that on your communication. You need to explain your child of the space that you need just when they are going through a certain revolution. And Rahu is in favor of your child. Okay, Rahu is with your child now. Venus, Taurus, anything Venusian, Taurian, expressing the voice. Okay, for example, if you need to take up space and you need the space to be in the form of not having to listen to your child singing, boy, oh boy, it's going to be difficult. And then Pluto will require you to go to the inner, to the core, to the nuclear level of why can't you hear your child expresses their own voice? Is it the sexuality? Is it the frequency? Is it feeling threatened by, and they would not give up on you because Rahu is in their favor. Okay, Rahu means that you're going through this crisis and you're going to have to adjust to your child. It's a very difficult thing, especially when Pluto ingresses, okay? So in here, it's more you're heading towards a cathartic experience that you cannot avoid. Because it's not like you have to be provocative now. Why? Because Rahu, if any house, it could say, let's say it's the second house, then the third house. In second house, let's say expenses, and then neighborhood or routine or expenses for my new lifestyle. Okay, then it's the notion that I have to be really provocative so that I can exert my new lifestyle. But here, you and the place where Rahu is different places. Okay, you are ruled by Saturn, and the child ruled by Venus is with Rahu. You are closer to Ketu than to Rahu. Now, you want to survive this, okay? You don't want to be perished by that. So you're going to have to go to the nitty-gritty of things, and these things have to do with your values, with your skills, with your expenses, and income. You're going to want to do, now it is in favor, the remedy, the only remedy is that you will do something for your leisure, singing, designing, do it something for your leisure of a Taurian nature that is creative. This is the only way out for you, the only way for you to make money, because you will need more money now. You need more space. You need to take up more space in the world, and so you need more money. Your child is with the revolution, okay? If there is a child, okay? If there's not a child, then the only way for you to do this is to do a creative project. That creative project is revolutionary. If you're thinking about shushing up things to do with gender, with because Taurus and Aries can be around food, the type of diet or whatnot, the differences around that, no. If you're heading for a creative project, be provocative about it now. Allocate the resources now. Put your money there. Put your money where your mouth is, and you better bet your money should be with the revolution and not with the history that steered the need to have a revolution. Okay, that's the only way for you. It's almost a life or death because it's going from your first house, okay, you, the house of the self, to the second house. Okay, and Saturn is in Pisces, so Saturn is in your third house, is in your routines. You see, everything is aligning up. Saturn is forcing you. You cannot move your feet in the right direction. Saturn is going to put your feet on the ground and get you to sit and write, to sit and sing, to sit and create. Day to day to day to day to day to day to day, your soul runs out. Okay? Not in a bad way, but it requires you to finally, headstrong, create what you came here to create in this life. Okay? If this is a baby, then maybe you're heading towards labor. That is psychologically strenuous, but hey, you're yielding the children of the revolution, you know? If this is a creative project, you better bet it would be a big one. Pluto denoting big one that will take long, Saturn denoting the strategy, literally your feet. You will not be able to move your feet unless you're moving in the right direction. You have to understand that. You would not be able to walk, you would not be able to move unless you are writing, unless you are singing. And this song is very authentic. It's the voice of the revolution. And it doesn't matter, you could be 60, you could be 70, you could be 90, you could be 100 years old. Okay? There's still revolution in your blood. Okay? There's still a rebel in your blood that wants to come out, that wants to speak up, and wants to stir up things. And you better bet it's going to be a life or death issue from you. And where Pluto is now is trining Sedna. All of the chakras will align. You begin to write, and your body's any congestion you have in your body, any lack of life that you've been carrying, any grief, any death that you've been carrying will be purged out and revived the minute you begin to create, and you day by day by day by day by day. Because every time it will be something new to you. Okay? You will no longer any other considerations. What people will think of me. How will I have the money to do that? Will it be stolen? Okay, Neptune ruled third house. Is my environment invaded? Does somebody hack into my computer? All of these things, all these considerations, they are being shed like dry leaves. And what's coming up fierce and strong is the voice of the revolution within you, your new values that emerge. You go to a crisis of your own values, and you understand that there is no other way but to evolve from here. And it's going to be 3 years of creation, and Uranus is heading towards your 6th house. So now you're beginning to write in this, or to sing, or to record, or to do something creative. And with Uranus in your 6th house, you're going to be healthy if and only if you are working with that, creating that which you created. Okay, look at how these things come into the continuation of things. Okay, now if it is an issue with the child, again, even if it is an issue with the child, you need more space, but Ra is in favor of your children. If your child needs to rebel and they need space, I don't see it as much as like your child moving with you, because the Venus is in Taurus and she's heading Gemini, so she's heading to your workplace, okay? Maybe your child works with you and you have a collision of values. Maybe you create something together, but know that what your child is saying right now, the voice that your child is expressing, especially as Mercury ingresses, it's not like there's nothing you can do that. They're right. They are right. Like I said, when I gave the example, if you watched the entire video, I gave the example and I said, if I am like a, Me Too veteran, and I come now to teach a classroom of people and they're Gen Zers, and I need to remember their pronouns, and I need to get out of my shamanistic whatnot view of holistic traditional medicine, and try to apply and try to listen to what is said to me about gender categories. How does that apply in medicine? How does that apply in cosmology? And have a new point of view. I have no right to tell them, listen to me, I'm entitled, I fought, you are able to stand up in this classroom only because I fought for this structure and so on and so forth. I have no right to say that. I have to listen to them because the future is where they're heading. Because I need to revolutionize my worldview. Okay, and if you know that, if you know who is who and who needs to evolve who, then you know Pluto is in the house of your values, they need to rejuvenate and transform. Okay? Whom you are having a conflict with, Taurus. Well, there's tension. Where's Rahu? In Taurus. Now it's going to be later in Aries. Okay? You don't want to die, right? When it reaches your fourth house, you don't want to die. Yeah? You want to be in a new house. You want to have a new, maybe somebody new coming to the family. Okay? Maybe your child is married. Maybe your child is having a baby. Maybe you're having a new house, a new land. Okay, you don't want to, it doesn't have to die. You can change, but this is a lot of a change or die phase. Ascendant Aquarius. Speaking about change or die, Pluto is about to go from your 12th house to your first. Aries is in your third. Okay, Leo in your seventh. So what you're going through in your third, your daily life, your daily routine, your vlog writing, your siblings, anything you do, your bureaucracies that you fix, are very tight to do with your partner. And you're also doing this together. Okay, the ruler of your seventh in your third, you're doing this together. Okay, for a Capricorn, there could be an accountant involved. For the ascendant Aquarius, the partner is involved. The partner is like a sibling that you either work with or the changing. It's like the partner is a sibling-esque relation with the partner. And it's not just your body is being transformed. Your body is being transformed because your life is being transformed. Think about a person who becomes athletic, okay? Then what is the best type of athletics that you can have is the athletics that is functional to your life path. And then you need to see where Mars is and so on and so forth. But if you are attending to be Beyonce, you would need a different structure routine for your athletics than if you are attempting to be a pole dancer, or if you are attempting to run a marathon. And then why would you want to run a marathon? Why would you want to be Beyonce? Like all those things. And the structure of your nervous system is transformed. There's a heavyweight pressure on your nervous system that is like a nuclei. It's like a nuclei activity within your DNA. So you're going to feel this ingress of Pluto most viscerally. Your astral body has been prepared since 2008 for this. So you're meant to do this. You've been prepared to do this. Now it begins to affect your cells. You're shedding out the cells that are no longer needed. Like if any person of you is watching this and is combating cancer, you could be healing. It might take 20 years, but you could be healing. You could be shedding these excess growth of cells in your nervous system or bloodstream or whatnot, or skeletal system, and by holistic transformation of the way you address, with Saturn here being in your second house, your values and your body, your values and your nervous system. There's more fluidity coming in that allows for cellular rejuvenation to be formed. So even if you're diagnosed, let's say, with some sort of something cellular related, then know that on a holistic level, your life path is transforming, and there's a need emerging that was not being addressed, or that needed a lot of preparation. So it's almost like birth. Okay, you're birthing a new you there. And this birth of a new you will result in the side effect of your healing from if you're dealing with any cellular DNA related ailment. Or alternatively, you're acknowledging certain neurodivergence that you have, and that's a part of your life. Change the value system and be more accommodating for people with more fluidity in their neural activities. And so you say, what does Aries have to do with that? Well, Aries is your daily structure, your daily routine. Okay, your partner is going to have to assist you on this process, at least for this month. And there are certain arguments. It can be that your partner changes because you begin to work together day to day. And now your partner is required to be somebody else. And as it will reach your fourth house, if you shush it out now when you're having a sibling-esque work in a daily routine type of relation, and let's say you want to buy a house, then now it's the money time to see, can this partner support me in my path, in my passage, in my path? Because my path is transforming now. Can it be still with the same partner? And it doesn't mean anything bad about you or about your partner. It can be that the partner needs to be more caretaking for you now. It can be that the partner needs to do things with you now. And the partner also is having a revelation. They're having a clarity of the heart. Can they continue on with you right now? When they are more your sibling-like. It can even be a situation where your relationship with your partner has reached a point where you're more friends than lovers, and your partner is coming clean and clear about that, wanting to have that romantic relationship, wanting to have that passion that currently you might or might not be able to provide. Because hey, your whole body is going through changes. Now Pluto is also taboos, it's also our anus, but there can be even certain taboos that you want to do, and you need to come clean with your partner, that create a certain conflict within you. And then Mercury is going to reach Taurus, and this is already your house, whether you're a family of origin or the family you're in, or the house that you're living in. And how can you accommodate for that? If you don't tackle this when Mercury is in the third house, do not expect that to be resolved peacefully when Mercury is in the fourth. Okay, if you're about to buy a house with your spouse, postpone the purchase. Postpone the purchase because there are going to be disagreements arising between you two that cannot be easily bridged. And if they can be, then you want to do that after, Pluto has left, after the Pluto direct leaving its shade period from the retrograde Pluto in Taurus. And then you might want to finalize a decision if there is a good election, okay? But be very cautious about buying a house with another person, changing housing, moving in with another, not a recommended time for that. Your entire life path is changing. It's very uncertain that it will include the same business partners, the same romantic partners, and it can be that your partner is sensing that, and they are having a sense of clarity of the heart. They need to clear their heart out. They are missing certain passion, or they find certain passion in other ways, or that you find renewed passion working as siblings, but that creates another conflict. Okay, there's a sibling-esque thing going on there. You're very good friends. Like in either way, you're very good friends with this person. Okay, the ruler of the seventh in the sign of the third, okay, close friendship, almost sibling-like, and Lilith in the eighth. So this person is being very authentic with you. They're very open. They're very vulnerable with you, and you are with them. I don't suspect that to be. There's a square to Mars here applying, but I don't suspect that to be betrayal. It's rather the avoidance of betrayal by addressing issues and clearing your heart out, which gives rise to how conflicting your positions are becoming at this point. And they, even if they will be accommodated, do not avoid the conflict, the necessary argument, the necessary back and forth, which can be very exasperating for you, having, Saturn just leaving your first house and Pluto embarking in. So you're exhausted. It's very likely that your partner is exhausted, but that's just the way to go. Ascendant Pisces. This thing is happening in your second house. Leo being in your sixth house, okay, your values, your money, your work, and Pluto ingressing into your 12th. Mental, physical health, and your possessions. The ruler of your 7th is in your 2nd. So for you, your entire psyche is going through a revolution. You're heading towards relationships where you're both friends. Like if it is a love relationship, it's a very friendship is becoming even more important, even if you weren't previously inclined for that type of connection. A friendship is becoming very, very, very important for you. And it is so important that anything that enhances on this friendship that's coming from your social circles or even certain taboos or hidden life or secret life or purgatories or confinement, that thing has to go. You will want to be with your friend. You will want to be pursuing what your daily routines call you to do, and it has to do with relationships. Daily relationships, you need to feel perhaps belonging. You need to feel seen in a new way. And when the sun hits Taurus, you'll definitely need to be seen in your surroundings. Mercury is ruling your 4th and 7th, so it's both where you live and who you are living with are going to change. It doesn't seem like a change that is easy on your psyche because you have a lot of unconscious fears around that. It is very likely you're not going to be living alone if you are living alone right now. It is also very likely you're not going to be alone. It is very likely that it's important for the person that you live with to be your friend. And it is very likely that you are having unconscious fears surrounding this, whole situation. You're having, and there is a conflict with your siblings that is coming into fruition. Okay, right now it's your values are changing, transforming. You no longer see things the way you used to see things, and you're speaking your heart out, and that is conflicting with something to do with your 12th. And because it's in the 12th, I don't predict that to be your mental health itself. It can be that those conflicts that be in you, and then you're becoming yourself. So you're trying. The telos, you're becoming more you now, and then you go outside to the neighborhood. You meet with your siblings, you meet with your neighbors, and that, your neighborhood has to change. And the thing is, if it is from the point of view that you're surrounded, but because it is Taurus, your surroundings can be more traditional, but they're going through a certain revolution. Okay, they're going through a certain liberation, and it's like I don't know exactly how to interpret that. Your own, like your partner or someone who is your partner is going to become more of a sibling. They're either from work relations or routines, or you're going to see them every day, and or you're going to meet, depending on the locations of your relationship stuff, you might meet somebody in the neighborhood, you're going to see them every day, and it is that is the telos. Okay, the telos is that your relationship partner and the house you're living in is going to be in this new neighborhood, or in this changed neighborhood. It's having a revolution, and something is happening here. But around the ingress to Taurus, there is a square with Pluto, so perhaps you have a mental crisis around that, or it stirs up certain crises, or now you have to live with a certain partner. But it's something very fated, it's something very forced, and because Mercury here rules your 7th and 4th, it's very unlikely to be any other than your romantic partner. And it seems like this romantic partner is dealing with an effect of something to do with your 12th house. Okay, some plutocracy, technocracy, plutocracy to do with the 12th house. So maybe somebody tries to psychically attack you. Maybe there is just a certain revolution that right now is happening. And more so than you are affected by that, by the way, because your ascendant, like Jupiter, is in the 2nd house. You're not making any aspects to this Pluto. It will square Pluto, but it seems like your partner is about to be affected before you are. Your house will be affected before you are. So it can be your home of origin, or the house that you're living in will be affected. I don't predict that to be an earthquake or something, but like who knows. But the partner, your significant other, is being affected by a certain change that either you are not aware of, you don't know that you don't know. And that can be a whole, because it's Pluto, it's a transpersonal. Maybe there's some surveillance and your partner is more aware of that than you are. When I am Pisces ascendant, when I enter my house, I got a lot of channelings about surveillance. And I'm like, okay, well, surveillance, it's all around. Like, hey, I'm used to it. And then I was sitting, on the porch, and I told you when I was watching. And maybe your partner is more affected by that. But with Pluto here in the 12th, you need to see where is Aquarius in your partner's chart, because through this inner rejuvenation in their own chart. And there's a certain, perhaps it can be mental crisis, because it also involves your work. There's a sense of like your work, you have to stay true to your heart in your work. Or if it is a pet, okay, then maybe you're going through a mental crisis that you cannot take care of your pet, and your partner will have to do this, or will have to do this daily, and it brings in a certain conflict, or you have a certain fear. It seems to me in this case that it is more so that you are afraid of this new change in your life, and your partner is affected by your fears. How are they affected by fears? You need to see where Pluto is in their chart, what is happening in their chart. But it's not so much that you are, like, of course you are affected, but you have fears around the change that is happening in your life, although you very much want it, because Rahu here is with the 3rd house, and it's with Venus, is with Uranus that is ruling also your 12th house. So whatever is happening in the 3rd house, you desire it very greatly. There's a certain revolution that you may have been feeling in the coming like years around, your daily routines. There's a certain revolution around it, and your partner is getting a more significant role in that revolution. Whereas Mercury will ingress into Taurus and will go to a retrograde phase, all the while both of you are having this Pluto situation. Um, with Lilith in your sixth house, and the Sun in your second, there's a change of values that stems from what you do to clear your heart out. You understand that there are certain things you need to do to clear your heart out, to be able to wear your heart on your sleeve, to be vulnerable. Being able to be vulnerable becomes a value for you. And it's a value. It's a value you withstand. The sun exalts in the second house. It's positive for you. It's positive for your health. It's positive for your wealth, for your money. And now there's a partner coming in. But your mental state, what you don't know that you don't know, your unconscious fears, it's more a battle between your unconscious fears and the way your partner communicates, or the motivations of your partner. You have fears around motivations of your partner, but here I actually see something positive. Like, this person is not against you, okay? They're heading towards where is the telos, where is good. But you're afraid of them, or you're afraid of the changes that are happening, or you're afraid of the position where you have to live with another person, or now the partner in your values, now having a partner becomes a value. To have a partner becomes a value. It's important to you to have a partner you can be vulnerable with, and there's a wound around that. And the joint with Jupiter, it magnifies that, but on the 18 degrees, it's not a positive degree. So either you need to change the way you see this degree or how you work with this degree. But there's just something, or your partner encounters this degree in a way that is difficult for the partner. Maybe your partner realizes certain Jupiter. So it can be, it can be child and partner, but here it's ruling the seventh, and Jupiter is ruling both your first. You have a communication, have an encounter with your partner that's affecting both of you negatively and stirring up conflict. It can be like a partner that becomes a friend, but because it's ruling your seventh house, and because the sun, you wear your heart on your sleeve, work can be an issue between you two, or your income, what you do for a living, and then there is them heading to either move to your vicinity. It's not the same house, but here the ruler of the fourth moves to the third, so the partner becomes around your neighborhood, okay? They become closer to you. They either move around, or you move around, or something happens here. And there's a sense of revolution around that, a sense of liberation around that. So of course it's something that you desire, but also a sense of, what is it that happens in your 12th? That's the question. What will Pluto bring to your 12th? And that creates it's a conflict that is fated, that will yield the change that you might already begin to see with Uranus moving to your fourth house. What is Uranus? It's astrology, it's revolution, it's gender queerdom, and this is your house, your home, family. Okay, your family will have to accommodate for LGBTQ stuff. You're a part of the revolution, scientific developments, technological stuff. Okay. And there can be fear around that, and there can be surveillance around that, and there can be conflict around that. But this is the way of the revolution. It's nothing like, you know that, you want that, and it stirs fears in you. Perhaps when it actually happens, there are fears around that. but it's just like I sense something opens in the heart, something positive actually opening in the heart. I don't know what to say. Ascendant Aries. So for you, your life path is going through a subtle transformation that leads to needing to revise your values, and that is in conflict with your mission in life, basically your colleagues, your conferences, what you bring out to the world, or your crowd investments if you're doing crowdfunding. And wow, this video is long. um, so you, yeah, with you, Mercury is ruling your third, so certain siblings come into the picture, and a clash of fate perhaps happens. Um, yeah, Virgo is in your eighth house, and yeah, Virgo is in your sixth house. Um, so work, surroundings, siblings, arguments around that, arguments about people with people, with your employees, with your siblings, or if you work with your siblings, um, and some more space is needed for social agendas, wider agendas. There's a bigger project that you're planning, a bigger social project of a Plutonian nature. Um, that you're planning maybe together, and that can stir up necessary conflicts and necessary clashes of opinions to move forward. So your life path, and you have Chiron around your life path, so there's a lot of healing if you're having Chiron return, but if not, there is a lot of addressing certain wounds about your ability to exert yourself in life. Yeah, Mars is the ruler of your ascendant is ingressing into Cancer, so you're going to be very emotional. You're going to act out. There's a danger you will act out, quite some. So compassion and radical acceptance are needed. Taurus is the last but not least ascendant. Um, Mercury is going through your 12th house, and you might be prone to certain injuries even because the conflict with Pluto will be in your first house, so there can be a bit of an injury there. Um, and if there is, it's just something that is a part of where your life is heading. Um, yeah. So for you, if you are in a confined place, the people that you meet there, um, you might have visiting from somebody in your family, or confined. Maybe you're hospitalized at home, and your parents, the person who caretakes for you, has a clearing of the heart to do, that put you in conflict with each other. Um, mm, 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 mm. And there are certain physical implications for that. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom. It can simply mean that there's certain conflict affect you from the situation. You have a mental crisis, and then it translates itself in the physical. Um, Although expansion of your ability to move and act in the world is expected, so I'm not afraid so much for you. It's just that you would be thinking with your body more. Right now you're thinking with your mind, and it causes mental crisis. You need to incorporate your body into your thinking process, and you will find a lot there. Uh, and the wisdom of the body begins with the wisdom of the heart. And once you connect to your heart, you can see unseen features or certain things tending to your father wounds, solar wounds, tending to the sun, worshiping the sun. All those things can tremendously benefit you. They will not avoid conflict. They will steer in the necessary conflict so that you can become victorious, and you do become victorious here. Okay. Your life path is heading towards a revolutionary place. Um, and all stakes are in your favor for this, like a cycle that begins for the next 9 years. And then, of course, Grau is going to enter to your 12th house. Is there a case of like a risk of death? Yes, there is. Of course, there is a risk of death with Rahu going to the 12th house and eclipses on it. There also is a risk of confinement, hospitalization, so on, whatnot. Um, but when Rahu is in the first, know that the 12th is consecutive to that. It can also mean that you're having a groundbreaking album and now you're a musician that went viral, and then you are more confined in your place because there is paparazzi, or you need to be hospitalized because you had a mental crisis processing all this success. These are also things that can happen with this combination. And especially with Pluto in your 10th, right? Your status, or your relationship with the father, all those things are being accentuated very deep. And so my prediction is that you will have great success. Uh, you will have great success. You will be very much in the focus, and that can have implications on your mental health because you need to expand your vision, expand your horizon, clear your heart out, so that you are prepared for this success. And there is a cellular rejuvenation. If you ever had a really jump start, or you got, suddenly got patients, a lot of readings, a lot of sales, and you just jump started your new position in life, have you noticed how the body itself needs to adjust to the new energy? This is exactly what's happening for you with Pluto in the 10th. You need to adjust to your new position. On the cellular level, you're rejuvenating the cell. Your DNA is repairing to allow for you to take up place in the world. Okay, so I'm not so concerned that you will die when Rahu hits your 12th house. I'm more explicitly, therefore, need to be in certain phases of confinement, so that you can process it. Not confinement inside of jail or something like that, but more like retreat to yourself so that you can process what happens to you, because you're getting a real up jump to your life path. Yes, there can be injuries involved. Yes, there can be conflicts. There will be conflicts with bosses, people in authority, or a conflict between who you are as a person, how you look to the world, because your image in the world, in the eyes of the world, is going to be transformed. And there's always this conflict between the 10th and the first house, okay? Who I am, what I put out, what people see me, the way people see me and the way I am is always in conflict. Okay, your image, your professional image, and who you are as a person, they are always in conflict, but inherent relation between the 10th and the first house. Okay? So, of course, when you're having an up jump to your life path, to who you are, there is also tension arising with the image you put out to the world, and the entire system, neurological system, nervous system needs to change. Your DNA needs to change, needs to repair, needs to purge out the old you, and also the old you in the eyes of the world. And there can be a crisis. It can be a crisis around your image when that happens. So prepare for that. That's that. Hope you enjoyed. And this was the ingress of Mercury to Aries. I'm Shirley with Spirit of Matter, and you're watching Spirit of Matter. And feel free to subscribe and click the bell if you want notifications, leave a comment, or support me at my Patreon, which I believe I will post soon.